Very good morning to our distinguished guest, Mr. Chuah Kee Man, professors, lecturers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our game-based learning workshop organized by the Faculty of Pharmacy UiTM. Continuing from the first series of webinars in 2021, the second series, is aimed to provide an exposure on the current trends and best practices in the 21st century teaching and learning. Today's game-based learning workshop will be delivered by one of the Malaysia's top e-learning experts and practitioners, Mr. Chuah Kee Man from University Malaysia Sarawak. Ladies and gentlemen, before Kee Man starts his sharing session, please allow me to briefly introduce him. Mr. Chuah Kee Man is currently a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Language and Communication, University Malaysia Sarawak, UNIMAS. He is majoring in several fields, starting from his bachelor degree, I guess, including educational technology, computational linguistics, learning sciences, and instructional design. He has won several awards at national and international levels for various innovations in teaching and learning, as well as in assistive technology. Kee Man was also the recipient of UNIMAS Academic Teaching Award in 2014, as well as the Best E-Learning Facilitator at the International University E-Learning Carnival 2016. Previously, Kee Man served as the Deputy Director at the Center for Applied Learning and Multimedia. In addition, Kee Man has published more than 40 journal articles and has a cumulative research grant amounting to 2.8 million ringgit. Ladies and gentlemen, game as formative assessment is fun, or perhaps we lecturers may have seen some of these games, but we are yet to blend those games well enough into our existing syllabus. And at the end of today's workshop, I truly believe that Kee Man will bring about a paradigm shift in our understanding of gamification in tertiary education so as to increase the engagement level with our students. Without further ado, Kee Man, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. John, for the gracious introduction, and also to Dr. Aisha for kind of like, inviting me for this workshop. It's really an honor to be here with all of you, especially from the Faculty of Pharmacy. I believe most of you are probably from the same faculty, but I'll try my best to kind of live up to the expectation. Hopefully, you guys are not, disappointed after this session. I'll share based on whatever I have gained throughout the years, and also whatever I have done in this area. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. All right. So the topic given to me, kind of, this is like trying to push myself away from the responsibility. But the topic given to me is game-based learning, a practical guide. It's really something that close to my heart because I also belong to we have a very nicely established gamification center at the university, and we have been working for close to 6 years now, throughout different, for different contexts, and something that we really, we really prioritize in UNIMAS, and we try to also educate our lecturers to implement some elements of game-based learning or gamification in their teaching and learning. But of course, as we know, it's not prescriptive. You are not supposed to like prescribe this just because it works in different contexts and you quickly prescribe it. It's more like something that you should consider and see which part of your teaching and learning can be enhanced or can be improved by using some of these elements, right? So I wouldn't say that just because it works in my context, it would work in your context as well. You need to consider various factors. So one reason why I use the word practical means the practical here actually comes from you. You have to decide whether it's practical or not. Some tools, for example, may be comfortable to me, but it may not be comfortable to you, or you may not be proficient or competent in using certain tools. So you might want to consider other solution and all that. But basically, that's the kind of like the overarching aim for our workshop today. I would like to kind of share with you what is game-based learning and also gamification. And interesting enough, even though this is an e-learning workshop, I will not go in detail like step by step on tools, because what I have realized over the years, I mean, especially the last 2 years, when I was conducting workshop on, this kind of e-learning workshop, it's not really effective to do it online because you're not using the tool. You're just listening to me explaining it. And most of the time you end up just pick up one or two things, and then you would explore further. So the good thing is some of the tools that I will be sharing today will also be available in my YouTube channel. So you can watch the video as many times as you like, so that I don't have to go through step by step. Because I think if I go to step by step, most of you will not be able to follow as well, because you don't have that thing in front of you. For example, there are certain software that you need to load, or certain website that you need to open and all that. And maybe you're joining this session using your phone. You don't feel comfortable using that. So I think this is from my experience, and I think it's more effective for me to go for the essence, or the how to put it, the principles of all these things, so that you get the idea. And my experience as well in gamification center, I noticed what is the challenge is not the tools, it's more the ideation and your thinking in terms of how game-based learning or gamification can be applied in the teaching and learning context, especially in higher education, right? Okay, let's go move on now. I kind of break it down to 3 parts. That's why I have a break in between. So we'll have 2 breaks. But then again, I don't have the specific time, because I don't put the specific time because I don't know how fast I will go. In a way, like if I cover the first part until 10, then we will break. It doesn't, even though I have not finished part 1, for example. So let's see how it goes. But my estimation is about more or less like 1 hour per part. But I think the first part maybe not so long. The second part will be a bit longer. But we will break like at 10, and then at 11, take 5 or 10 minutes just to, stretch yourself and drink a cup of coffee or tea. All right, so the first part is fundamentals. I think we need to clarify this. A lot of us may have heard of gamification or game-based learning over and over again, but you may have some misconception or some wrong idea about these two things. And then we'll go for practical ideas. I put here ideas instead of tools, because I think idea matters more in terms of generating your the way how you want to apply GBL or gamification. And last one is useful tips. The last part is mainly based on experience, what I have observed and what I have gathered through my own research as well, things that we have to pay attention to whenever we want to apply game-based learning or gamification. So let's go to part 1 now, the fundamentals of GBL. I like the word fundamental because it's fun. It's always fun to talk about fundamentals. All right, so the fun of GBL and gamification. But before that, let's hear from you. Just to get the audience warm up a bit. Can you share your favorite game? It could be digital, non-digital, physical, or whatever you do for fun. The reason why I do the last thing, what do you do for fun? Because whenever I say game, you say you don't play games, right? Can you go to this link, because I want to see the overall. I want to see the overall gather. You can type in the chat as well, but then I think it will be easier for me to visualize if you can go to this link. Let me type it out in the chat. Let's see, where's the chat? Need to go to the chat. Okay. Oh, the Aisha is very quick. Pac-Man. You still play that? All right. This one on the wooclap.com/gb. If you're using your phone, then you can just click the link. If you are, or you can scan it. You can scan it. Yeah, you can type it in. The reason why I'm using this tool is just to see the overall gathering, because if you type in the chat alone, then I wouldn't be able to do the quantification, right? Okay, just go in and type it out.
It's a very old game, isn't it, Kee Man?
Again?
It's a very old game.
No worries.
I
Any
have
game will be game, right?
seven
Any game will be game.
kids.
So I have some responses now. If you can see here on the screen, some are typing in the chat. You can also type in the too. The bigger the word supposed to be, the higher the frequency. I like Sudoku. It's kind of popular. So Monopoly, right? You have hill climbing, Wuduku instead of Sudoku, right? I saw some here: Diablo, Pokemon Go, Roblox, right? Jigsaw puzzles, Among Us. Some of the classic. If you, sometimes it's amazing to see all these games. Like Super Mario has been around for more than. It was first introduced in the early 90s, and it still survived until now. And of course, other games like chess, Monopoly has been around for so many years, right? And it's still alive now, right? Game somehow can survive so long, okay? And then you have Candy Crush, which is maybe not as popular as early 2000. I think now people are moving away from Candy Crush, but I can see some people are still playing it. But if I were to ask you, why do you play all these games? If you can see here, all this badminton, chess online, and all this, uh, I think largely you would say you just want to release your stress, kind of like, after a long day, or maybe you have something bothering you. You just use game just to get away from it. I play a lot of games. In fact, I commit at least 3 hours per day to play games. You'll be surprised. I have a whole list of game on my. If you can see on my screen here, I have this two thing called Steam and all that. If you open this, you'll be surprised with the amount of game that I have. Maybe I'll just open up and let you just to prove a point, right? I have many games, and the one that I'm crazy about now is Age of Empires 4. You can see here. This is like my two. You can see all the games I have here, all the football thing and all that. The game that I'm crazy about is this game now, Age of Empire 4. I also play some simple game like mini motorway just to link the road and all that. Sometimes you find it silly, but it's quite useful to relax. And what I notice is every time I play games, during the game itself, I get ideas for a lot of things. Sometimes my papers come from the game itself. When I was like playing the game, the idea suddenly strike, right? But of course, most of the time we try to avoid that because we want game to stop us from thinking about all this thing. And I think it's quite useful. Depending on your preference, whenever I ask, slightly more, I wouldn't say old, as a senior academics, right? Senior academics, like professors and all that, they would tell me that they don't play game. But then when I dig deeper, I'm sure there are games that you play, right? Just that you don't brand it as a game. I'm sure every day you have something that probably you just maybe not every day, probably in a week you spend some time playing like all these sports or games like chess. Some people love to play the betting game, which is a bit risky, but then it's still a game, right? And then you will realize that all this game has certain elements that we don't really pay attention to in teaching and learning. Apart from just using it for entertainment or release, all your stress and all that, there are educational values in all this case. Candy Crush, for example, just to give you a preamble of what happened. Candy Crush, for example, it may seem silly in a way, like you are playing all this, but it's a puzzle game, just that you have to crush the candies. To a lot of people, they will think like, why are you wasting your time playing this, right? And like, why are you wasting your time just to crush it, all this candy? But if you analyze the mechanics behind it, it actually triggers you to do a lot of thinking as well, because you need to think, how are you going to, arrange the candies so that you can crush it, right? But if you turn it into education again, you will like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can use Candy Crush to kind of make it educational, right? So there is some remixing or repurposing needed, right? Later on, I'll share further. But any game actually can be fun or can be useful in learning, right? I saw the word Wordle appearing now. I was hoping this to appear just now, but now it appeared. I think this is like an old game that suddenly become popular because of that guy who make it online, and actually it has been around for quite some time, right? And another Malaysian person make it, what do you call it? Katapat. Have you played that? a Malaysian guy actually changed it to Malay, called katapat. You can, it's actually ketupat, but then change it to katapat, but it's Malay word. So you can just Google katapat, and then you will play the Wordle, the Malay version of Wordle. The thing about, if you notice that the thing about Wordle, for example, is you only get to change to a word after 34 hours. I think that creates the excitement. If you were to play non-stop, maybe you wouldn't want to play it, but because you have to wait kind of like the next day to try a word a day kind of thing, that it makes you, that it creates the anticipation for you to go further. All right. So thank you so much for your responses in this one. A little bit of preamble of what we are supposed to talk about. And you can see games are everywhere and in many forms. Some people don't like to call it games. Some people like to call it, actually sports itself is a game because it's all the elements are there, right? So you have all these traditional games, right? Sadly, a lot of traditional games we tend to lose out already. Like we tend to forget how to play it, like all this, Chongka and all that. I think the younger generation may not know how to play it, but then there are digital form as well. Then you have all these board games, right? Taboo, and all this Monopoly, the Game of Life, Connect Four, and all that. And then you have all these digital ones like Minecraft, League of Legends, and all this. These are all popular in among the younger generation. But to be honest with you, if you were to check on the statistics of, I forgot to put it here, but you can Google up the statistic of gaming community around the world. The majority are between 30 to 40 years old, because those are our generation. I mean, the millennial generation born, middle, late 70, the 79 onwards, maybe until 1989 kind of group, where now we are about 30, 40. So those are the group that actually play a lot of games, and they are the majority. Contrary to popular belief that majority of gamers are teenagers. So actually it's wrong. That conception is wrong. We always say, oh, kids play game or younger. Actually, the majority are the older group. If you go online, if you go to gaming community, you see all these, between this age are doing all this game streaming and all that, right? So if you were to talk about game, right? A game, it's a rule-based system, right? I mean, this is from Zimmerman, who is the one of the famous author when it comes to gamification or game-based learning in the corporate world, because he used a lot of gamification in the corporate world. But in general, he defined game as a rule-based system with quantifiable outcomes, where different outcomes are assigned to different values, and the player exert effort in order to influence the outcome. If you notice this, I like this definition because it's true. Because why do you play certain game? Because there are quantifiable outcomes, right? You see your scores, you see your ranking. Those are quantifiable things that you can see, right? You get to acquire special abilities. You get to acquire different, items, assets. Now all these assets you can even sell it through NFT, right? Non-fungi token and all that. Because if you earn certain thing, you can actually sell because of this quantifiable outcome. And then different outcome are assigned different values, because if you are good, you get higher values, right? If you are not so good, then you, of course, you get different value. And then you, as the player, will assert effort. You will put a lot of effort in order to influence the outcome because you want the better outcome. Now, if you take a look at this definition, it's basically the whole educational system, because this is how our system is shaped. We have a course with rules, right? We quantify outcome, our CGPA, our grades. These are all quantifiable outcome, right? And of course, different outcome will get different value. If you get a 4, you are treated differently as compared to those who get lower, maybe, or if you're in different grade. And then you, as a learner, will exert effort in order to influence the outcome. Basically, the game itself, it's a learning, or educational kind of paradigm to begin with, right? And if we were to use this as a good definition of game, then basically everything in the world is a game, right? All right. So based on that definition just of the game, then of course there are many approaches coming out. You have gamification, you have game-based learning, you have gameful learning, you have serious play, serious game, and all this, and the list goes on actually. Simulated play and blah blah blah, long list. I say, I kind of put the heading as the unnecessary distinction, because it creates a lot of confusion to a lot of educators, especially because you start to realize Why do we have to distinguish all this? Like, what's the difference between gamification and game-based learning, for example? What's the difference between gameful learning and game-based learning? What is serious play? Are we saying that all our gamification materials are not serious? They are just for fun, right? All these things creates a lot of confusion. But I would love to focus on these two because these are the popular ones: gamification and game-based learning. If you really want to distinguish these two, then we really have to fall back to the whole purpose of these two things. Now, I think if you go for game-based learning first, I mean, if you were to go for the definition of game-based learning, it means you use games or gameplays to facilitate or enhance the learning process while motivating the learners so that the learning outcome can be achieved. If you take this as a definition, it means you are not using the elements only. You are actually adopting the whole game. You are taking the whole game and use it in your teaching and learning process. For example, you are teaching, let's say, certain topic in your courses, maybe maybe toxicology, for example, and then you want to ask them to distinguish the different things we are toxic, for example. But then, in order to do that, you adopt Jenga. You know Jenga, right? The block, all that, and different tiles will have different things. For example, that is game-based learning, because you are not just using the mechanics of it, you actually use the whole game, which is the same thing, trying to make sure that the whole tower will not collapse, and you use all the tiles. That is game-based learning. Or another case would be you use Candy Crush, another example just now. You directly use the Candy Crush as a game that you're going to introduce in your, maybe if you're teaching let's say mathematics, and you would love them to count, right? And in order to create the tile, you need to count like 4. You only allow them to crush it when they reach 4, for example. They kind of rules out, and then you said, but you are using Candy Crush immediately. You are not changing any. You are not making any modifications, to the mechanics of it. You can make changes to the purpose or the context or the color, whatever, but the mechanics are the same, right? So that would be game-based learning because you directly adopt it. Or another one would be easy. If you're teaching economics, then you use Monopoly, right? Just to show them the context of what you mean by the concept of monopolizing the whole real estate and all that kind of thing. So you just directly adopt it, which also means if you're teaching your courses now, you can actually scout around, online or whatever, games that are specifically designed for your courses or maybe your units. That would be game-based learning. In fact, game-based learning is the kind of like the lesser, I wouldn't say less difficult, but then yeah, it's quite direct in a way because you don't have to think too much in a sense, because you don't have to design your redesign your plan and all that, because you just have to adopt, right? Dr. Iman is asking, how about marketing? The marketing, that's so depend on the game that you can think of, right? If you go to, I think if you go online, even just now when I was trying to search for all these game in the pharmaceutical world or even pharmacy, there are quite a number actually out there. But then of course you need to purchase it, and you also have to consider whether the game can be played by many students. You don't want it to be like a game only for 2, right? And then it's going to be very hard for you to control your class. But in essence, game-based learning doesn't have to be online. It can be physical as well. But of course now, because it's e-learning, so we might want to also consider the e-version, because 2 things. One, most of the e-learning games or e-based game allows you to collaborate easily, meaning you can go as many as you want sometimes. Like a game, like all these multiplayer games, if you were to play at home, maybe if it's a board game, for example, you can only play maybe maximum 4, right, for board game. If you do it in class, then you have to buy so many board games, right? Because let's say you have class of 40, you need 10 sets, right? For. I don't think you can afford to buy that many sets, and it will be very hard for you to control as well. Another issue about physical game, I mean like board game and all that, for learning, is that it will be very hard for you to do this analytics or logging or monitoring, because you'll be standing in this group, right? This group is playing it, and then when you go to another group, this group may be talking about something else, right? And if you want to do that kind of analytics or even monitoring, it'll be very hard. Online, everything can be logged. You can even record the whole session if you want to easily. Like now, if you ask them to play certain game, you know, they can do screencasting. They can record the whole session and let you see. In fact, a lot of teachers now are doing this in school. They ask students to use Roblox or Minecraft to develop something, but then because within the software itself, you can actually save. So the student will share whatever they have done, the process of building something. Before this, you only see the output, right? You don't get to see the process of it. Now the teachers can actually ask the learners to record the way they decide how to, you know, how to build this the world or whatever you want them to build lah, in a way. Okay, that's the beauty of the digital format. The downside, of course, not everyone can go online. That's another issue, right? And you have to kind of consider all this factor. Now that is game-based learning. Another one is gamification. Of course, this is the in thing, like the almost a lot of people are talking about how to make their learning, you know, gamified or with element of gamification. Is using the mechanics. So the use of game design element in non-game context, meaning to say you start off without any game, like your courses, they are non-game context. Then there's no game in it, right? There's no game in it, but you use some design element or game mechanics inside just to make it gamified, right? A good example would be Kahoot, that's so popular in higher education in Malaysia these days. Kahoot actually is not a game, to be honest, right? It's a quiz tool. And if you take a quiz tool, it's actually any, just like our exam. Basically, it's just our MCQ exam or whatever exam. But then you included some element of design, game design there. For example, you have elements of surprise, you have elements of leaderboard, you have elements of badges, you have elements of points, and then you put it in. So Kahoot remains as a quiz tool, but it has elements of gamification. So Kahoot is not a game, right? If you go to Kahoot itself, it never claimed to be a game anyway. It says it's a gamified quiz tool. Same like quizzes or all these tools. They are just tools for learning, but with gamification elements or with game design elements, right? So you have to be clear of that. So you cannot say Kahoot is a game. I mean, what do you do in Kahoot anyway? You have to answer quizzes, right? To me, that's not the game. I mean, if you ask me, answering all this MCQ, for example, is nothing fun in it. I mean, right? I only realized this because I stopped using Kahoot for quite some time now. But I realized this when one of my students said, you know, sir, it's so stressful to come to your class and play Kahoot. I said, why? I thought Kahoot is fun. Because I have to prepare, you know, it's just like sitting for a real test. Like, last time you only have midterm quiz and all that. Now every class you have Kahoot, for example. I mean, it's like, even though we don't expect them to do that, but some students who are really conscious of all this, you know, all this thing, they thought if it's graded, for example, it's even worse, right? If non-graded, maybe it's not that stressful. Imagine if you say all my Kahoot quizzes will be 10%, they will go crazy, right? I mean, they will just treat it like another exam. So where's the fun, right? Where's the not to say where the fun, I mean, what's the purpose of learning, right? So they will just try to memorize and try to answer the Kahoot as far as they can so that they want to get the top score, right? So sometimes it becomes like it defeats the purpose of you using Kahoot just to make it more interesting for them. But I'm not saying it's wrong. You can still use it, but you need to figure out what the bigger narrative or the bigger element to make sure that you use it wisely, not just use it just because, oh, Kahoot is a game, so I want to put it in my courses or in my teaching. I have seen a few lecturers actually use Kahoot for final exam. I was like, why? Why do you use Kahoot for final exam? I mean, it totally kills the intention of Kahoot, because the purpose of Kahoot is to make it, you know, more engaging, more fun. And then when you do it as a final exam, and then, you know, it just kills it. I think there were a few, if you go to TikTok, and those of you who are on TikTok, if you search Kahoot for exam, you'll be surprised. Students are commenting on all these cases. They are lamenting that what's the point of, you know, like some funny one will say, I pay for my university courses and then all I did was sit in Kahoot for final exams. That kind of, you know, that kind of thing. And of course the intention is good, right? The intention is good. But then sometimes when you feed it wrongly, then it becomes a challenge, right? The use of any kind of affordances that contribute to gameful experiences. I also like this one. If you can go to, if you have time later on, you can search Dieter Dig and all. These are all famous people in the area of gamification. Hutari and Hamari are from Finland. Dieter is from US, but he's also one of the pioneer for game design thinking, how to design using games. These are all famous names. So Hutari and Hamari actually says the use of any kinds of affordances that contribute. Affordances means anything. It can be anything. It can be game element, or it can be, you know, whatever you can find in your resources, right? If you have only certain element, or sorry, only certain resources in your case, then you use them and see whether you can create this gameful experience, right? So anything that can help you to enhance the experience of learning. Okay, that's gamification. So if you want to go further, of course, there are a lot of distinction here. You can see, you know, we have toy. This is the kids when we were younger, when we were baby and all that, we play toys. The thing about toy, the benefit is there's no rules. You can do whatever you want with a toy. That's why when you go to Toys R Us, for example, if you see the baby section or kid section, most of the toy or element shouldn't have rules. If you tell the baby that this is the way you play the toy, there's something wrong with that, because the baby should explore the playful interaction on their own, right? Like, you know, all these toys is supposed to shake, for example, right? But then they can bite it, they can throw it, whatever they want, because that's how they interact with the object, right? You shouldn't limit it. It feels weird that when I see parents say, no, you should shake the thing, don't bite, and all that. You are restricting the playfulness. You know, what's the point of playing the toy anyway, right? Okay. But then when you start to put rules, right? When you start to put rules, when you start to include some elements of regulation or a bit of control, then it becomes a game, right? The toy suddenly becomes a game. This is more serious, and usually it's for, you know, slightly older lah, you know. According to Dieter Ting, for example, by the age of 7 onwards, you can start introduce game because they start to understand the rules. Actually, it can go younger if you expose them to more games, but the rough average is about 7 years old onwards. Meaning to say, before that they could play anything they want, like play you know, all these toys that they have, like Hot Wheels or whatever they have. But if you start to introduce game like Uno or chess and all that, it should begin about 6 to 7 years old. Then because they can understand the rules, right? Okay. Of course, serious game is the serious that it's not really fun, but it's a game. Like all this, a good example of serious game would be Flight Simulator for the pilots. Nothing, you know, nothing fun with that, because yeah, I mean, there's an element of entertainment and fun, but it's quite serious, because if they don't learn it well, they would crash the plane, for example. And in the real life scenario, it would be very risky, right? Serious games are games that you create for serious purposes. Even in medical field, there are quite a number of games now, because you cannot afford to have a lot of body for you to perform surgery, for example, or even in pharmaceutical world, you cannot afford to test different chemicals on the human. So you might want to simulate first, test it out on serious game, and get your thinking going. Then you decide whether you want to proceed to the real world or not, right? And of course, there's also element only, which is the gamification, and game-based learning is based on the game, so it's slightly in between, because it could be a bit of the game, or it could be the whole game, depending on how you want to use it. But basically, you use the game, as a whole. And this is also a chart that distinguish it. You can have this game thinking, game element, virtual world, and you can see how the general game, entertainment game that we play, Among Us and all that, usually have element of all elements, and which is this one, non-purposeful in a way, because there's no purpose. Like Among Us, what's the purpose of Among Us? If you were to tell me what is the purpose of Among Us, then you say, just to find the find the imposter, for example. But in real life, we don't really do that. Do you actually do that in real life? I mean, find the imposter. You go to your office, you start to check who is the imposter among my crewmate and all that. You don't really do that, right? It's not really purposeful. But if you repurpose it and make it relevant, then any game which is non-purposeful can be purposeful, right? Recently, when I conducted the workshop with the secondary school students to design game, one of them actually used Among Us and link it with the plant science, like the imposter is actually the wrong plant among the group. So I think I find it quite interesting where a game which is a bit non-purposeful, the student actually repurpose it and make it more meaningful for the learning context. That's the thing. Like even a lot of game actually like Dota, if you're killing all this thing, you just remain in the virtual world, right? It's not really purposeful in the real life. But the skills that you learn in planning, in strategizing with your friends, like the famous game now among the teenagers, the PUBG, right? PUBG, the battle royale kind of concept where everyone will go into one world and start attacking each other and kill each other. If you take a look at it, it's actually nothing really purposeful there because uh, you're killing each other and then even Fortnite and all that. But if you try to repurpose the skills, the strategy that you use, if you ask the student, they will tell you a whole hour about this. Like, how do you strategize to kill the other team? Oh, they will explain this is the thing that they do, or we do random thing and all that. So that's the thinking that we want actually, not really about achieving the outcome of killing on the team or complete the whatever task given. All right. Okay. So these are just for your information. You don't have to like remember this, but these are some of the things that you can consider. So essentially, game or gamified materials are used to create fun, right? Because I think whenever you talk to educators, like when they try to use a gamification or game-based learning, they say, I want to make my class fun. I want to make my course fun. I want to make it more interesting so that the student will come to my class or will like my class and all that. These are the often perceived to be effective in motivating learners. If you really do a meta-analysis of all the studies in gamification, yes, it is helpful in motivating learners. But all the studies so far has kind of avoided from telling you that it's very short term. It's like all this no dopamine that we get lah. It's a short fun. You'll be surprised that if you do gamification for a long time, student will tell you, "Can you stop this?" In a way, if you put it in a can you if you put it in a nicer way, they will say, "I they would rather you to be more serious or more straightforward to the content sometimes. They may think that the fun element is too much because I think it's if you're talking about Malaysian context, I think we're so used to this traditional way of learning, and unfortunately, even though we try to exert change and all that, learners actually are not ready. Some learners, not all, but some, because they're so used to it already. Imagine when I started to use gamification in my classes a few years ago, there were quite a number of students actually wrote a comment because I asked them for feedback, which I even interviewed them and all that. They said, actually this course shouldn't have too many games. We want to go straight to the point. We want to know how to score in an exam. We want to get the A and all that, because playing game doesn't help me getting A. You get what I mean? Because the concept is still like that, the way they concept it. But I think the era has changed a bit. I noticed there's a shift in our learners as well. Not only that they want to get the A, they also want to make sure that they enjoy the process, which I think maybe you still have a few who are resistant, but ultimately, what I'm trying to tell you here is a game may not have to be fun. You don't have to tell them that you're playing game, but you're using all this game-based learning or principles or gamification in the design process of your lesson or your activities. But you don't have to explicitly tell them it's a game, because I mean, your project and all that, I think if you really analyze it, there are game elements inside, just that you don't really, explicitly say or explicitly identify it as a game, right? Things like that. Okay. But I would love to also share, I shared, this part about fun in my sharing before, but I would love to share it here again, because the worst enemy of fun is to be told to have fun, right? You create game like, okay, let's have fun, and then you do game, and then you see all the faces like, mm, it's like you think it's fun, but then they don't think it's fun, because don't tell them to do have fun. You make sure that the whole concept of GBL or gamification is inculcated, but then you'll get the fun eventually. Just that it doesn't have to be the same conception of fun that we normally see. When I ask my colleagues, for example, when I do training for UNIMAS lecturers and all that, when I ask them, how do you define fun? How do you know students are having fun? And then they will say, oh, because they are smiling, they're happy, they will give a lot of positive feedback, and then they will be, they will be, how to put it, celebrating, sharing on social media, saying that this class is fun and all that. Then I said, what if you give them E? All of them fail the course. Would they think the course is fun? Because the experience is fun, right? But the outcome suddenly is F, for example, majority fail the course. I don't think they will write a good comment for you anymore. They will probably say this course is a killer, or I don't like this course because the lecture is not helping. I just play game in this course. I don't know what I'm doing. You get this all the time actually. At the beginning, when you try game, right, they will give you some positive comment. But when they start to get the results, you see a flip in the because I did in my own classes. I see the change because sometimes I intentionally do that just to see their reaction. Again, we'll still hold on to this kind of reward system, and they don't see the whole journey. They just see the instant reward that they get. So if I play this game, what do I get? Do I get an A in my course? Do I get a good marks in my quiz and all that? So you have to be careful. Like what just now I saw Dr. Aisha typing. You have to find the balance, and you don't have to create the fun all the time. Sometimes playing games doesn't mean they have to be enjoying, like fun all the time. It can be quite serious, right? So which brings me to this thing. I shared this many times and would love to share it here again. We have to change our conception of fun. And I love how this Nicole Lazaro break it down into four, right? You can read further. There's a link there. I will share this slide anyway later on, and you can also go to the website on Zero Design. What happened is they distinguish fun into four categories. Now, the first one is the easy fun. This is the typical thing that we have. It's out of novelty. Let's say you have never tried games before, right? All this while you've been teaching using one method, right? You're in your classes, you're lecturing, whatever method you have in your online classes. Suddenly today, you introduce a game. Oh, everyone will feel this one, easy fun, because it's out of novelty, a quick win kind of concept where they get excited because you introduce something new. Normally, this kind of easy fun will not last long. It's like a short term, and it doesn't mean that it won't work. It will work, just that it's just for that short time. So you have to decide when to use certain game or certain gamified element just for that purpose. And then even if the student cannot and sustain the fun later on in your course, you don't have to feel sorry or feel sad about the whole journey because it's intended only for that easy fun, right? For example, you have a very dry topic. All this while you've been using that method and you realize the student don't get it, right? Student don't really appreciate that unit or that topic. So you make it fun. Or I mean, you try something else to trigger it. So that is called easy fun. The reason why, if you keep on holding to easy fun, you realize student will not really sustain lah. Another one is people fun. This is quite relevant to collaborative kind of project or works. And a good example of people fun will be sports. Why do we play football or badminton? Because there's a partner, there's a friend, there are friends that play along, right? We play the game not because we really like the game, but our friends are there. For example, why do we play Among Us or PUBG sometimes? Because friends are calling us, right? Today I may not be feeling like playing it, but then since my friends are there, okay, I just join. But I enjoy it because my friends are there, right? This is people fun. So sometimes in your collaborative work, you have to decide that this is where sometimes I don't really encourage randomization of grouping. There's a good and pro and cons here. Of course, we can go a whole day talking about this. But if you want to encourage people fun, they should be with their friends, you know, because they know each other well and they know, the behavior and all that. And they feel more motivated to complete the task because they know, the friends, and all that. If you randomize them with partner that they have never known, I mean, it can, but you actually need more time. That's why when you randomize the grouping, for example, you need to give them time to get to know each other. You cannot immediately give them tasks and ask them to complete. You will see some dominant people doing it, and then the rest will not do it. Free riders will be there because they don't know each other. They don't have that kind of connection. Same thing like football and all that. If you ask me to play with a stranger, I don't feel I want to. I don't want to play with the football with the person because I don't know you, right? For example, but once I get to know you, like Dr. John, for example, first time meeting, maybe if you ask me to play badminton with Dr. John, I was like, maybe we just try it out first, right? But once we get along, we get to know each other, then I'll call, hey, Dr. John, let's play badminton, because that's how the fun is created because of the people, not because of the game, actually, right? So this is some element that we have to consider in our gamification or our game-based learning. Hard fun. This is the challenge type. This is the serious game type where, I mean, slightly closer to serious, but it starts to be a bit hard. But like you play Sudoku and all this, you know, like even Rubik's Cube and all that, it's quite hard, right? But then people say it's fun. I don't get it. For example, like this Rubik's Cube take me forever to kind of solve one, but some people can solve it in less than 8 seconds or some 5 seconds. I was like, how did you do that, right? Because they enjoy it and they find the challenge as a fun. And then, I mean, as a fun element. To us, maybe it's not fun at all, right? And last one will be serious fun. This is where people who are engaging in serious fun normally would not smile at all, but they really enjoy the excitement of completing it, the fulfillment of completing the meaning that you want them to achieve. Like all this, this is not Rubik's Cube. I mean, like you solve a very serious problem. One example here is classic example is folded. I don't know whether you have seen this. It's a very typical example that you will hear people keep sharing. Holy is actually a puzzle created by scientists, and it's open source, and anyone can go this one, fold it. What happened was all this while all these diseases and all that, sometimes they it's very hard for them to solve it by scientists. What happened is they make this game, and anyone can just come in and try to identify some problem with the whatever they are showing in the thing. So you can fold fold it and all that, and there's nothing fun in this because you really need to think about the critical element. But the fun element is actually solving it, right? Solving the puzzle, solving the problem that you identify and all that, right? So if you take a look at what we have been doing so far, like problem-based learning and all this, it should be fun. So what went wrong, right? Our problem-based learning, maybe we are so focused on the process itself, forgetting about the problem, right? The problem with problem-based learning is the problem, because your problem may not be fun enough or may not be challenging enough for them to feel that fun, right? It could be just a trigger or a problem that has been used for so many semesters and you just decided to keep on using it, that kind of problem, like, you know what I mean? But if you start to relate to some real world scenario, or you relate to something that they like, student are interested in, then you see the change in the way they deal with a kind of problem-based learning and all that. So I'm not saying that these are absolute, all right? There are, of course, many other researchers who try to distinguish fun. After all, fun is it's subjective to a lot of people. But the fact that Nicole can actually categorize it, I find it quite useful in helping us to understand that fun doesn't have to be smiling, cheering all the time. It could be quite serious because of the element that we are trying to focus on. Okay, I see some comment, but I'll deal with the comment later lah. Okay, but yeah, just nice. About 10 minutes to 10. So this is the end of part one already. But then let me just deal with some question here. Any question? Let me see.
So, Kiman, how to infuse 2 or 3 funds, this element, this
Yeah.
how to infuse that in
Yes,
learning?
you can infuse different types of fun. You can be within one lesson or within one session or one activity, or I prefer you do it as a multiple activity, different activities addressing different level or different type of fun, but they are all tied together. So for example, before you go to the collaborative part, for example, the typical thing that we do, collaboration and all that, right? Collaborative project and all that, you can always have some easy fun. Like you can introduce the key concept first that they're going to deal later. Instead of just dumping them the task or the problem that they need to deal with, you do some prelude or some pre-activities that highlight those key concepts. So that's easy fun. You can use, maybe, if you still want to use Kahoot is actually a good example of easy fun, because it's very quick win kind of thing, and then you go through the feedback from the student and try to rectify their conception or misconception about the terms, for example. You can also develop games. I have seen some people use board games, but digital one, like they use Genially, a very famous tool as well, Genially. They just develop this kind of cards so that different group will get different cards, and then they start to explain to each other what is the meaning of this term and all that. Even the famous Quizlet, the flipping of Quizlet, the flashcard, those are example of easy fun. So easy fun things are really good for fundamentals or this foundation kind of activities, very fundamentals. It will not go deep, just to touch the surface kind of thing. Some people use amazing race kind of concept, right? Before they scavenger hunt, individually. So you can create some digital scavenger hunt using Padlet or using different tools. Just plant all this thing there. So you give them like 20 minutes, just go and click on all this link and then find out the term and then answer your short question, or maybe just gather it in a different form. Those are all easy fun because it's just very quick kind of way to get them hooked, right? Once they get the concept, then you move on to the people fun and all that. It doesn't have to be linear. You can always jump to serious if you want to. But what I mean here is the infusion, I think I normally prefer go by activity rather than trying to mix everything in one activity, for example. It will be quite hard for us to manage actually, because the thing about gamification or game-based learning that I learned is like we are so conscious of student reaction. I think not just gamification, game-based learning now. Whenever we try out new approaches, right, we are so conscious about how the student react. So when we don't get the reaction that we wanted or expected, then we start to feel demotivated. In the end, we abandon the activity, or we say, never mind lah, we don't want to do this, because maybe you have spent your night preparing this and all that, right? And then when you try it out, the student, none of them actually smile, or none of them actually get excited, and then you say, you have another part actually in that activity, but you say, never mind lah, we don't want to do this anymore, right? Because you don't get the reaction. So I think that's something that we need to change as well in the heart of educators. Sometimes don't be too conscious about all this. You probably need to do one cycle first and then get the feedback. I think that's something lacking in our teaching approaches. Get the feedback, get that kind of reflective kind of approaches where we try to reflect. Why did they, not reacting? Maybe among us, to them is old school. It's something lame, maybe. It's like nothing really fun for them. So you might want to do a bit of background checking on what they like. Every semester, normally before I really straight design my activities, normally I would do a quick survey in the beginning of the course, week one. If this cohort is the cohort that I've been teaching previously, is even easier because I get to gather the feedback earlier. So like in year one, for example, I can do a quick survey. What do they like? The kind of things that is happening now. Are they conscious about what's happening and all that? So I get to see what they like. So later on, you'll see some example where, based on my survey or quick need analysis, you don't have to do an extensive one. Just get to know them, because after all, if your classes is smaller, it will be easier to manage. But if you have a lot, then it will be harder to do game-based learning or gamification effectively. I wouldn't say it won't work, but it's less effective actually. All these approaches that we are talking about today, even like game-based learning, gamification, it's really suitable for smaller classes, maybe 50, or I think maximum probably 70 kind of thing. Anything beyond can be done. I mean, the largest group I have that I tried was 76. But I find it very, very tiring, because I need to, like really monitor, and if I really want it to be effective, like in a way. But if I just do it just to do like an easy fun kind of thing, right? Like just to get them get excited and all that, it will be okay. Or even collaboration, I think people fun will be quite easy to implement as well. I wouldn't say like totally easy lah, but it's slightly easier than these two, because these two requires more thinking. Like when you do problem-based learning, if you give everyone the same set of problem, it's not that fun, because in the end you get the kind of like I copy you, you copy me kind of thing lah, because everyone's getting the same problem, right? But if you try to make it more flexible, in a way like they identify the problem, right, and they find out their own problem, and they solve the problem using the approaches that you're introducing them, I think will be easier to manage. The kind of consideration that you need to think. Later on, you see some examples that that I have done, and also some of my colleagues. And but if you were talking about how to put it, to really infuse everything in one, I think it will be quite challenging. Not to say it's impossible, it can, but you need to really plan it nicely. And don't feel disheartened every time every part of it is not working. It's normal. After all, not all games are suitable for us, right? Some people can go crazy about Dota, but I find Dota nothing really fun to me, for example. Or you know, or some people can go crazy about FIFA playing football game. I prefer play the physical football, for example, that kind of thing, lah. All right. But I'm into football management. So you can see just now. I love managing, like I love that kind of game where you get to strategize how certain thing. But if you want me to play the game itself, maybe I don't really fancy. So different. Imagine that's only one, right? Imagine if you're 100 students with 100 kind of preferences, 100 kind of game liking. You'll be crazy if you want to accommodate everyone, right? So you have to go for the one that you think would be the most uh, feasible for you to do, right? And sometimes you have to accept the fact that you don't design to accommodate everyone. Sometimes how to put it, the game itself may not accommodate everyone, but the process or the completion will accommodate everyone lah. I mean the theme may not accommodate everyone, but the task that you want them to complete is actually inclusive. Just that the theme may be suitable only for some, right? Or maybe for the majority. Okay. All right. One way to solve that problem as well is a rotation policy. I mean, your own. You don't have to tell to your student. Um, like in my case, sometimes I rotate. Like this kind of activity, the theme will be this group, like the majority, right? Next week there will be another theme only for the minority or the lesser known game, for example. So they get to taste different choices as well. Not like everyone go for the majority all the time. It will be unfair. And then sometimes you will be surprised that all these minority, they get really excited because finally our choice is being acknowledged or being recognized and all that. Finally, people get to know these people. It's like music. When you keep on talking on all this mainstream one, and those who love indie music, they will feel like they are isolated all the time, right? But when they give them chance, you mention all these indie band, they get excited because my lecturer know this band, and suddenly my class can know about it as well, right? And then we learn from the process. It's the same concept in game as well. Not everyone will know all the games you mentioned just now, right? And if you give the chance to everyone to explore it, then you will see what works and what not as well in the process. Okay, I think we can take a break now. Maybe quick 5.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kee Man.
Yep.
So we shall take a short break. Maybe we take 10. Is
10,
that
10,
okay
sure.
if we resume at 10:10?
Sure.
All right, so we shall resume at 10:10 and see you later. So hi, welcome back everyone. So I hope you have enjoyed your short break, a cup of coffee probably. So Kee Man, back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. John. So we're going to go to part 2. So part 2 is more on the ideas on how to infuse. I combine GBL and gamification. Basically, I think we don't have to be too, too particular about the distinction. Whether or not you want to use GBL or gamification, it's really up to your choice. But the concept is the same, or the practical ideas will be more or less the same, right? So let's move on now. Yeah, just a quick question. This is a yes no question. Maybe you don't even have to go to the but then yeah, you can go if you want to, you can just go straight to the same platform just now, right? Let me just move to the next question. It's very simple actually, yes no question. But if it's a poll like this, then it will be easier to know. Have you designed your own games or gamified activities? It's a yes or no thing. If you think it's a yes, then just yes. Could be partial, it could be, could be how to put it. It could be like a totally new innovation, or it could be adapt and adopt other people's idea. Just a quick poll on this one. If all yes, then I can go already. Nah, just kidding.
Kee Man, are we using the same link?
Yeah, same link. Are you able
All
to
right.
put?
Sure. I will paste the link again in the chat group.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. John. I have about 28 logging in to this thing. You just have to move to the next question. One so far, or maybe some of you have done it. Yeah. Again?
Kee Man, playing Kahoot or quizzes in the classroom is considered designing game.
Yeah, maybe it's part of your activity, so it's a gamified activity. So it could be
Okay,
like
all
that.
right.
Yes. If you have used Kahoot or quizzes or all this kind of tool to be part of your activities, right? Then yeah, counted lah, counted lah. Yes. I've seen like 13 so far, but majority seems to say no. I would love to hear from the 5 actually. Yeah. Uh, who actually responded to the 5? Maybe I mean the one who said yes, maybe you can share a bit on what you have done. Anyone wants to share? I mean, like just a brief explanation of what you have done so far. I should have asked you to put your name, but anyhow, because if it's in the chat, then I would know who. But it's not important actually. I mean, not really important to kind of go deeper. But if you would love to share, you can tell me like what you have done so far. For those who have done your own games or gamified activities, anyone would love to do that or
Can I start?
yeah, sure, Dr. Aisha.
Yeah, just start the ball rolling.
Yeah, sure.
I think my first venture into games would be Kahoot lah. Have to be honest. I think about 4 or 5 years ago, when it was really on the height of Kahoot or quizzes,
Yeah.
as a learning activity. And later, I have to say, because of you,
Uh-huh.
Kiman, escape room,
Again? Oh,
escape
escape room.
room.
Yeah, escape room. Yeah, yeah,
Escape
yeah,
room.
yeah.
So I think that's probably the basic tool lah, and I've played around with my students
So
with my
you have done escape rooms for your courses. Okay, okay. Oh, I saw Michelle there. Oh, okay. Michelle is in here as well, using the escape game feature in Genially. Language game. Yeah, Genially is really a good tool for you to try out how to do escape rooms. Yeah, those of you who have never heard of Genially, later on you can explore. I mean, I'll show you maybe quickly what Genially is, and those of you who are not familiar with the complicated tools can start off with Genially, like what Michelle uh, has done in her classes for language games and all that. Anyone else want to share, just in case you really created a game, like a really, like a board game or like a digital game? Anyone else? I mean, especially this 7. Maybe one more? Nobody? Too shy to share. How many, maybe out of this 7, how many actually develop your own game, like really like a new innovation, like your own card game or your own, version of a game, apart from using the concept like escape room, puzzles and all that, which is already available in the Genially, for example. But what I say here is like a solid product base lah. Anyone? Kalau ada. This is your chance to market as well, right? To tell people that you have created some games. Nobody want to share. Okay. Ada. I saw some. Nobody? Anyone?
Hello, can I just
Ada.
say
Yes.
something?
Sure.
Right. Okay. What I did is during this online ODL classes, I use a Google Sheet to record attendance. Right.
Okay.
So
So
from
what did
there,
you
I also put in some things like some features where I can track students' participation, and then from there I can actually put them into a class leaderboard, and students can actually have a real-time update on their class performance. Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I use that a lot as well. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Lim, because I think And when it comes to assessment, for example, right, we tend to keep it for us to ourselves, right? Like when the students submit or when they give marks, we keep it in our own system or maybe our own Excel file. We only give back to them during certain period, like maybe after a few weeks or maybe after you have done the marking, and then you give them. Some courses even wait until the end of the semester, then they get to see it. A good way to kind of gamify this process would be what was shared by Dr. Lim just now, would be you make it transparent from the beginning. I do this as well. You put it on Google Sheet, and then of course they cannot modify, they can only view, right? And they will be able to see the marks that they get progressively, and then you get the average. I'll show you some example that I have as well. And nice to know that uh, it's also used in different contexts, right? Maybe one more, any other before I move on? Kalau ada lah, just in case ada yang berminat nak share. But to be honest with you, to really design a good product, like a product based kind of game, it's not that easy. I'm sure those of you who spend time to do it will feel the excitement of seeing the final outcome. But those who have spent time using the digital tools like escape room and all that, it's counted as innovation as well, in a way. But then maybe it really depends on the way you package it, right, in your teaching and learning. Okay, thank you so much for the 28 who responded, but majority seems to say no. Maybe after this workshop you would start trying, and maybe because of the conception that normally when you say game-based learning, you really have to design the game. Not really, as long as you apply some of the elements. Okay, right. So games and learning design. I love to start off with this one because we try not to treat game-based learning or games or whatever as an isolated kind of approaches. It's pretty much related to this experiential learning, all right? Pretty much related to what Dewey has been promoting all this while. So, John Dewey has been one of the strongest proponent of all this experiential learning, active learning, and all that. And Paris actually in 2019 kind of summarized it by outlining this principle. And I want you to take a look at this principle. Like principle number 1, learning experiences have beginnings, middle, and ending. I may not agree on the ending part, but it means whatever you have in your session, like a proper session, you will have the beginning, the middle, and the ending, right? To every lesson. That's the if you treat one lesson as an experience, right? You're not designing the learning lesson, you're designing the learning experience. You will have the beginning and you will have a proper ending, even though the ending could be the beginning of another new thing. But basically, there's a cycle, right? And then principle number 2, learners are the protagonists of their own learning experience. As much as you want to be the protagonist, you know that you are not the protagonist. The student themselves will be the one who control their own learning. I mean, they don't call yourself as antagonist. You are not the villain. You are the model protagonist, right? In a way. So principle number 3, learning activity, not subject matter, establishes the theme of instruction. This is something that we always miss. We always treat the subject matter as a theme of instruction. We forgot about the activity, which is why a lot of educators are still comfortable going through the content slide by slide, and without realizing that, even if you don't cover in the class, students can still cover it on their own if they want to, if you start to focus on the activity. For example, you don't want to lecture at all today, right? But you have given the lecture or your slide earlier. Then you tell them today's activity, or let's say 3 activity, will be based on that lecture file that you uploaded. You will get students who will spend time reading through because they know that your activities will shape the instruction. Of course, if you do this once, if it don't work, you don't give up, because they want to see that kind of consistency. If you do it once and it don't work and then you abandon, then student will be happy because, oh, okay, the lecturer didn't even bother to use the file and whatnot. You get what I mean? So you have to be consistent. But basically, it has to be based on the activity. What is your purpose for today, for example? Let's say in the 3-hour lecture, what do you want to achieve from this? I want my student to understand how to do this, for example, right? So that's your aim. So that will be the activity that you shape. The subject matter is the one that supplement the whole process. Okay. Then principle number 4, context contribute to immersion in the teaching and learning situation. I think context is very, very crucial now. Immersion means if you want students to be immersive in your teaching and learning experience, not the virtual immersive, Immersive means they are immersed in that area. For example, you're teaching pharmacy, right? You want your student to be a pharmacist. They have to immerse themselves into that world of, into that world of pharmaceutical world or pharmacy kind of context, right? If you keep teaching them something which is not relevant to the area or the field, they will feel like, why am I doing? Why is this even in the course? That kind of concept, right? If I want to teach doctors, for example, I need to make sure that they are in that feeling, the vibes that they are in the medical field or in law, in different contexts. In language, that would be the best. In my case, I love it because I get the mix and I get to try out different field. And in my case, normally, like the rotation policy, the student get the feel of everything. The sciences will get the feel of sciences, those from arts will get the feel of arts, then they get to learn from each other as well. But then the context is, for example, if you're teaching, majority of your classes are from the medical faculty, for example, let's say I'm teaching language and you're teaching them resume. I will question this because, I mean, if I'm a student, I will question it because doctors normally do not have to have a resume because they don't have to really apply for job. The placement is kind of guaranteed after so they'll be wondering, why do I have to prepare resume? Then you have to figure out a different way, right? So you can say, for doctors, maybe you don't have to prepare resume to apply, but you need it for your promotion, or maybe you want to go for your specialization, you need your resume. So it's a different type of resume that you need to write. Then for the art, why do I need resume? I only need my portfolio to showcase my art. Then you will tell them that resume will be like a one page to summarize your skills or ability. So I mean, what I mean here is the context will contribute to immersion. Or else, if you're teaching the same thing and standardize it throughout, then they will not be able to get it, right? And last one will be instructors are authors. You are the designers of the authors, and supporting characters. You are also the facilitators. But one thing that we always forget is this one: model protagonists. They are the protagonists, but we need to model it. You want your learners to be self-regulated, you have to kind of model that kind of self-regulation as well. If the students start to notice that you go through your slide one by one, that's how they learn. They will memorize all your slides. If they see you doing certain thing, they will model. If they see you get excited about designing something, like designing different innovative approaches in your teaching and learning, they get excited as well because you are modeling it. We tend to forget this. We always assume that whatever we are doing will not be mirrored. Actually, they are noticing. They are even they pay attention to us more than before. And now because of social media, whatever we are modeling can end up elsewhere, which is quite dangerous in a way, like whatever we do in the class normally is between us now. I mean, last time, but now because of online learning and all that, we become, visible elsewhere. So you'll be surprised that suddenly people are talking about you elsewhere. I mean, on social media and all that, things like that. But if you take a look at all this, there are more actually, but I picked this 5, which is quite crucial. And you notice that this principle can be applied in the way we implement GBL or game-based learning or gamification because it's quite similar. Just like a game, you must have the storyline where you have the beginning, middle, and ending so that they see the relevance of you using this GBL. And they are the characters in the game itself. They are the main player, right? They are not just passive receiver of the element. So in a way as well, if you go back to the definition of game by Zimmerman just now, they need to be more flexible. You should be more flexible in allowing different outcome because you want learners to assert their own effort, right? So the those who really are really excelling, then they will be more proactive, and those are not so proactive, they will get different outcome because they just like a game. You have this kind of leveling up and all that. Okay, so I just want to share this because I find it very useful and it's applicable to many approaches. But when it comes to game-based learning, it's very relevant when it comes to this. And there are several options for you to consider. First one is the toughest, maybe design your own games and gamify activities. Not really tough once you get it done. Like some of you, like Michelle just now used Genially, for example, or even Dr. Aisha used Genially, Dr. Lim used Google Sheet. Once you do it once, you will see it easily done every semester because you kind of know the pattern of how to do it, right? The toughest thing is always to start, and you have to start and experiment, try and error, and then if it works, then you keep on using it, right? Infuse game mechanics in existing activity. This is probably easier in a way. So you take a look at whatever you've been doing now, problem-based learning, your project-based learning, or whatever you've been doing. try to identify parts or units or even components of your content or even assessment that can be gamified by using some of the mechanics, right? But when I say this, it's not like taking it out and breaking it in Kahoot. No, it's like you need to identify. Okay, this project I want to make sure that the student form a better idea. So instead of just normally doing the typical ideation, I want them to go through escape room. I mean, for example, so through the escape room concept, they try to devise different idea. For example, I'm just giving you an example of how you apply one type of mechanics or one type of game into existing activities, right? Use existing game directly. Those of you who have been doing games, you can share. I mean, in UNIMAS, we actually have a website where lecturers can share. We call it Creative Culture Playground, where lecturer can just dump resources there. So you can use directly or use the existing game, like all these commercial games. I'm sure there are a lot out there. So if you find one which is interesting, then you can directly adopt that. Use this one, even though it sounds easy, actually it takes a bit of planning as well, because you need to think whether that game is suitable or not for your context. Use the existing game but repurpose them. 4 is quite easy, not to say easy, quite feasible, meaning to say you remix, which I will introduce you to today. We call it remixing game or remixing play, where you mix like existing game so that you don't have to crack your head to think about other things, right? Let student design games for a specific topic. This is also popular. I did this. I did all 6. I mean, I experimented all 6, and it was a few semester kind of thing. So I gamify my whole course from week 1 to week 14, and I get to try all this, right? And my assignment is actually 5 and 6. Instead of I use a not typical submit report kind of thing. I let them design the game, but the game is actually reflecting the LO that I want them to achieve. Later I will show you some example. Last one is co-design with student. So you are also part of the design process. Number 6 would be like, don't let them design on their own. You are in the co-design or co-creativity kind of approach where you are part of the process as well. So for co-designing, it could be a start if you want. Before you go to 5, I should have reorganized this. Number 6 should be number 5. If I go by level, meaning to say before you let them design their own game, you co-design with them first. Co-design as in you can have certain assignment or task where you are part of the brainstorming process, right? The approach that I use for this is game design thinking approach, right? You can use different approaches. The famous one will be ADDIE, ADDIE, right? So when you say co-design, you are part of the whole cycle, so that they get to see how to design game, right? For your specific topic. What I find interesting is like by the time you did number 5, for example, you get a whole collection of games for your topic, and you'll be surprised by the number of creative ideas that your students can contribute. The issue that always appear for number 5 will be who owns the intellectual property. In my case, for example, I give it to the students, and the student will have to sign the form for copyright submission, and they will do this SA, statutory declaration. Actually, we document it so that the student feel like they own it. Once they feel like they own that thing, they will put a lot of effort to make it work, because they want that ownership of the IP. If you do it and then you keep it, then they will say, ni buat untuk lecturer, ni nanti lecturer masuk pertandingan, dia menangguh, dia dapat. Something like that. They feel like they don't want to put more effort. But if you give the ownership to the student, give the credit to them. After all, they did it, right? Most of the time, then they get excited as well. And that will be one output that they can put in their resume if they want to put it in their resume for those who are into this. I think it's win-win situation for us, right? Okay. Yeah, and if you talk about teaching and learning context, like I said just now, it's quite similar. You have course requirement, then you will have the game objective. This is like shifting the focus. Instead of calling them all these things, you can change this to this kind of thing, course regulation, game rules. You have instead of calling them assignment, you call them quests and challenges. I stopped using the word assignment in my instruction to student. I call it challenges, right? Or sometimes quests. So it makes it more interesting, or sometimes mission, right? Because they're so used into all this, all this fantasy world now. If you tell them they watch so many K-drama all this Netflix, all this thing, right? They are so used into this kind of mindset. So you, instead of calling that assignment, quests, challenges, mission. Grades become point, badges, and stars, or even whatever you want to give them. It could be, ranking and all that. Passing the course will be winning the game or just passing the game, and then course contact will be the game narrative. What is important is really the last one. This is the part where you need to do a bit of checking on what is the best one for your case, right? What is the kind of narrative that you want to hold on to if you were to design a lengthier kind of gamification, not just one off. If you do it one off, like one game for that class, done, then it's fine. Even then, I think you still have to think of the narrative, right? Because suddenly if you go to the class, okay, today we're going to learn this, and then you say, okay, let's do this Kahoot, or let's do quiz, or let's do this escape room. It feels isolated. It feels like it's just one part of the activity, right? But if you make it more interesting, like when you start the course itself, the class itself, you make it like a game. Right? Today, our mission is to help solve the flood problem that is occurring in Klang Valley, right? You see that it's getting serious now. I mean, if you're teaching engineering student, for example, right, civil engineers, you start with a bigger meaning, right? And then they see that whatever activity that you flow then will be related to the theme that you set for that class. If you start out, okay, let's go to unit 1. Okay, slide number, it becomes like very content-based, subject matter-based, right? But if you go to activity-based, they know what they are there today. Even if it's online class, you can say today we need to figure out how to solve the flood problem in Klang Valley. Of course, from there they will learn all these things that you want to learn, like whatever soil, structure, whatever you want to teach them. But they don't see it that way because they see that okay, they're solving this issue. I'm sure they have a lot to say. You get students start talking about all these things, sometimes politics will come in as well, blah, 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 but then you can control that so that they don't talk too much about that. But what I mean here is you get the student excited because they know that they are learning something which is solving the real issue out there. It's similar to game narrative. If normally in games, if the narrative is not strong, in my case, for example, I would not play the game because I don't see I don't relate to it. But if the narrative is strong or interesting to me, then I will continue playing it, all right? This is the example. I've been sharing this many times, but this is what I meant by narrative. I gamify my whole course. You don't have to do this if you're starting to use gamification and game-based learning. You don't have to gamify the whole course, right? And then you can just pick one or two unit to do it. In my case, this is academic English 2, is the one that I told you just now. Like teaching different faculties, they will have different needs. But I just pick one. You can just go to Google Images or all these free resources, just find a map, whatever you like, then just do some kind of branding, like labeling if you want to. So in this case, like week 1 and weeks 1 to 3, they have to go from the harbor, and then this is the first experiment that I did actually, without any proper planning. I mean, like proper ideation yet. I was just trying it out. Then you go to the cave, and then blah blah blah. So different station will have different thing, right? They will have different challenges to deal with. Of course, your challenges need to be relevant. Let's say in harbor, suddenly your challenges has nothing to do with the harbor. Like there's, the narrative nothing to do with the harbor. So you have to make sure the narrative is related. So when they go to the cave, for example, you don't ask them to do something which is not in the cave, right? Like here, for example, what I did, I remember was, because this is academic English, normally it's very dry to learn all this citation, right? Blah, 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 right? So what I did was for the cave, weeks 4 and 6, they were actually learning APA, citation and referencing, the American Psychology Association, the format, right? Normally the typical way is look at the table and then do the citation kind of thing. What I did was, I actually do a big, like this time, that time was still physical. So I did the mahjong paper. I stick it on my wall, and all the mahjong paper has like a gibberish writing of all these wall, cave paintings. And then I asked them to locate the name and then put it in the correct citation logbook kind of thing. So like I said, imagine that you are trying to decode what the ancient people are trying to tell you, and then you need to acknowledge the the person who is giving you idea. So you have to find, because out of the drawing there are some names there, so they have to figure out which is the surname, which is the last name, and they get very fun because students start to argue. I think this is the surname. I think that is the first name. Then when the course end, they will know that in APA we focus on the surname. We don't focus on the first name, for example. At least they remember, that kind of process. These are what I mean by narrative is quite important. Then for another course called linguistic, it's actually computational linguistic, but in UNIMAS we call it language and computing. Basically, they are learning all this, the programming languages and all that. But I changed it to this one because I relate it to the Marvel. That time the Marvel cinematic universe was so strong. All this Iron Man, blah blah blah, was happening. So I mix a bit with the Borneo and Sarawak kind of element. Like Daruhana is actually a place in Sarawak, and then Serapi Mountain and all that. So I try to relate so that they get to see the adventure. So different stages will have different things. So in my LMS, I do not do the typical labeling. I use this labeling lah. So instead of Unit 1, the topic, I would say Mission 1, Lancome Station, Mission 2, Ex Daruhana, something like that. And then there will be a bit of narrative, right? So this is how I plan, just in case you're wondering. And every time I do this, right, people will ask me, MQA tak marah ke you buat macam ni? Macam lain ni. How do you document all these things for MQA purposes, auditing? I said MQA tak pernah kata pun tak boleh. But tapi it's true because MQA basically check on your cost plan, your student learning time. You just fulfill all those already. And your assessment metrics. All you did was rebranding what you call them. This is how learning focus. This is the unit, right? And then this is like a rebranding. You still have the same cost plan, the cost outline, the cost requirement. You still document the assessment. Everything is done nicely. And I've been, submitting this for auditing for so many times, and no issue at all from my university's academic department and also MQA. In fact, some of my portfolio is still stuck there because they use it as an example of how to incorporate gamification or game-based learning in your whole course, not just one part, but the whole course. You can see how I align to the LO, but my way of planning, of course, is a bit different. I automatically, because my LO are linked to the units, so it's easier for me. You can see here, Unit 1 is actually addressing LO1, Unit 2 is still LO1. Each LO is aligned to the topic, so it's easier for me in a way lah. Then I will see which part to combine and all that. Then you will see, instead of calling them assignment, there will be team challenge, right? Team challenge. So even the team challenge, I don't use the typical name, like the typical assignment name. So like this one, team challenge 1, I say decoding Samantha. So they have to listen to a short movie and then give some feedback on the thing. Then team challenge 2 is escape room. They are trapped in Daruhana dungeon. They have to actually identify the type of interfaces. In fact, they are learning all these user interfaces. So the typical way will be going slide and telling them, okay, this interface is what, or when I do discussion, they will just discuss the element within the interface. But then I change it to escape room concept. And then assignment will be like Project Black Widow. I call it like a project thing. And then you have Project Quantum, different name. And then they get excited. If you ask this cohort or my student, they will remember all the things that they did because of the gamification, not so much about me. Because the team, I set it from the beginning, right? The team beginning. And you see how I divide it. This is how I divide the teams. Same concept like what Dr. Lim shared just now. I use Excel. Everything is on Google Sheets, so they can see it. I assign roles. So the prime will be the leader, actually, the prime. And then the protector, dazzler, maker, energizer, the thinker. So this is the group name. This is the student's name. You can see here, this is roughly 70 plus. So this is how I memorize name as well. Just in case if I forget the name, I would just say, okay, the dazzler from Code Crackers come out. So I would know that it's Aisha, for example. It's how I help me to memorize. I get to memorize name easily within 1 or 2 weeks because of this structure. Easier to remember, right? And then they have special ability. You can see here down here. I didn't show the whole thing, but I can show you the Excel later. But each row here will have their own special ability that they can use whenever there are team challenges in the class, right? You can see how I need to plan. Like for example, team challenge 1, decoding Samantha, if I were to ask them. So the team need to decide whether they want to use the ability, and the ability can only be used once, right? They need to really strategize how to use this. It's not a game for a game. This is for the class. I mean the activity in the class, not really the whole game. Like you can see here later. It's not like a game like only for this. This is like every unit will have something to do. Like you can see here, right? The game, the activities, right? More to the course lah. I don't think you want to play this game if you're not taking this course But then, the point is, this is what I meant by you look at your existing activities, your existing, whatever you have done, see which part you can inject all this gamification element, right? So what happened, I noticed this class, like I don't know how many times I've been sharing this in different workshop, different platform. This is the first cohort that I taught, this thing, that has 100% attendance from the beginning until the end of the semester. Can you believe that? Like, I have never achieved that. Even sakit pun datang kelas. Or sakit pun dia akan cuba juga, try to complete the task and all that. I sometimes feel bad because I had to do this because my class is late evening and I know students tend to fall asleep and they don't like late class because they have been doing so many things in the morning until suddenly in my class, so they will be bored. So what happened is they anticipate my class more than a few. Sometimes I feel bad because they skip the earlier classes just to make sure they can come to my class, which I told them many times, don't do that, right? But what I mean here is if you find a way to capture their role, and then they will try their best to reflect that kind of commitment. You know why? Because if they don't come to class, I will know who, one. Number two, they will lose out. The whole team will lose out. Let's say that day, the thinker will be in charge, but they don't know this. This is the mystery box that I normally use. Let's say the task for that day will be handled by the thinker, right? Suddenly the thinker is not there, for example. Then the team will lose out. Right? This is where you make use of this people fund, right? You make use of the people fund just now, and I let them choose. I don't set the members. They decide their members, and you'll be surprised if kadang-kadang the one or two student lambat, they will chase the friend to come to class because they scared that I do activity and then they're going to lose out the thing. But again, if you study from a different point of view, or even my own self-reflection, it could be because of the marks, right? It could be because of the marks, not so much about the activity alone, right? Okay, these are some activities that we do in the class. What I mean here is not a game because it's activity-based, right? So, but it's a game-based activities lah. So instead of normally using typical mahjong paper and all that, I also ask them to use Lego bricks. This is the foundation part, the quick fun one part, the easy fun part, and then after that they're going to use this block and then build something based on this thing. But this task itself is already gamified. In this course, normally we study natural languages. Natural languages mean the languages that we use, all these languages that we use, right? English, German, blah, blah, all these languages that we use. But I gamify it by reversing it. I said, why don't we change this? We do conlang. Conlang means constructed languages. You create your own language for your group, meaning only your group can speak. Nobody can speak it. So that once you created the language, like this one, Korean language lah, Quila language lah, whatever language you have here, then you reverse it and you tell people how to learn your language. Then they know the process of how language works because they have to create their own language now. I mean, that's how I kind of twist the narrative. And then of course there are some activities that they do, like prelude to that. This one I still use quizzes the beginning just to introduce them the concept of conlang and everything. And then the physical activity. This time still activity. You can see that even though it's physical, face-to-face classes, I actually use hybrid back then. I asked them to do it physically, but then they snap and then they put it on Padlet, and then because easier to see and easier to document everything. So this is what I submit to MQA portfolio, for example, because I get to keep everything on all this. If I were to ask them to do physically alone, I have to go and take pictures, right? Blah blah blah, record everything. This one they take charge of the whole process. If you are not familiar with all the tool, Padlet will be a good start. I mean, it's a good place to document everything if you want to, right? Okay. Next one would be, oh yeah, this is just an example. Just now, if you see this, there's an assignment here, Project Black Widow, which is for them to do. So even my project looks a bit different. In fact, if you, the actual thing is like, they have to crack a code to open the assignment. They were, they were kind of get really frustrated with me because that day I told them your assignment is up, but then when they go to the learning management system, we use Moodle, right? You guys use ULearn, right? What happened is they want to open it, but they couldn't open it. Then they asked me how to open the assignment. I said, you have to find the clue. So the clue is actually all over my LMS platform. It's like they go and click here, click there, then they find the code to open up the project. I mean, this is another element of fun just to make sure that they go and find it. And I told them if they couldn't find the code within 24 hours, I will delete the assignment. So they, of course there will be those who find it and then share. No harm. At least they take the effort to do that, right? So how I name it is like Black Widow, and then you can see I relate it to the real world issue. Even here, they have to find sustainable development goal. I didn't even have to like go through with them. They have to do it on their own. And then how I gamify it is during the lecture, there will be a mystery box challenge. In the class, there will be a mystery box challenge. I put all this sustainable goal card. I print out the card. I put it in my box. And then one person from each group will come and take it out. And then they have to quickly give one word only about the sustainable development goal, and then make sure that the team can answer it, that kind of thing. So just to get them familiarized, and then after that they have to explain what is this SDG. Well, instead of us learning about SDG, they need to learn about SDG too. They need to know what is happening around the world, right? Then after they get to know the concept, then they have to decide, do the ideation, and plan the project. You can see this is quite serious already. It's hard fun already, because they need to devise a real world solution. They actually need to develop the prototype. And what happened is towards the end, I actually put a notch higher. Instead of presenting in the class, I bring them to Magic in Kuching, because Magic has a branch in Kuching, and this is the Magic punya hub in Kuching, in Borneo 744. They have to pitch it to the panel of judges. Actually, they don't know this. They didn't know this earlier. So I asked them to prepare the piece, the pitch deck, everything done, and then go and pitch it to the judges. So they were, again, another element of gamification where you add on the competition element higher by making sure that they don't just do it for the cause. They know that they're going to present it. When they know that they're going to present it to the panel of judges, suddenly the scope changes. I mean, the feeling is different, right? And then they know that they're presenting it to a more meaningful crowd lah, not just presenting to me only. Okay. So these are some examples. Just now, Dr. Aisha mentioned about escape room. Michelle also mentioned about escape room. If you are not familiar with escape room, it means you are stuck in a room, right? Not the escape room that you see in the movie or in the real escape room, but that one is more violent. But this one is like in the room, they are full of clues where they have to solve, right? They have to solve. It can be different things like answer quizzes or whatever you want. So it's called escape room. Then they can escape. This is from my colleague from biotech. She make it a simple one using Google Slide. You can see here. Let me just show you. A simple one using Google Slide actually, because Genially sometimes can load quite slow compared to other tools. So some students may not be able to access it. So this is Google Slide actually. Just find the background, and then you just like in a PowerPoint slide, you just put all this button or whatever, and then they have to find clues. So in the escape room, you have to try to click something which is changed to thumbnail like this. Let's say if I click this one, left code, then there will be a quiz for me to answer, or a question or for me to think, right? And then you have to submit. This is a bit more manual, because what my colleague did was you need to kind of submit one by one, right? And then get the code. So in order to escape, you need to key in the final code here, based on your grouping and then the coding. Okay, so she used a Google Slide kind of approach, and it works. And based on her feedback, the student actually within the time given. What happened is, if you want to do this, you can lock it after 45 minutes. If you set, like, you can set like, okay, now you can start, and then after 45 minutes, I'm going to lock the submission. You disable the accepting responses. Then they can easily solve it. So this is kind of like a quick one where you use Google Slide, and then you just link it to the Google Form, because you don't need to have fancy software to do this. But if you love to explore Genially, you can also explore Genially later on, right? Okay. Those of you who are curious, if this is your first time listening to Genially, it looks something like this. It's like, if you are familiar with all these tools like Canva and all that, it's online. You just have to make use of the tools given. The thing about Genially is the loading time sometimes can take quite a while, and I notice sometimes students will complain about that as well. So one reason to go for Google Slide is that reason, the loading part. But it's more interactive in Genially. See, now I'm loading pun lambat. Okay, tak apalah. Okay, okay. All right, this is like how it looks like generally. So if you go here, if you create generally, it will ask you what you want to create. It has a specific one called gamification. So if you want to get some idea, you can go here and then you can discover on your own. I will not go through one by one, but there are quite a number of tools here that you can use. So imagine, let's say you want to, like, let's say just now I teach SDG, right? I can use this quiz, right? So I can just change some question here and then use it in my lesson. Most of it are free. If you see the star, then it's premium, but you can sign up for premium if you want to. It's not that well, I wouldn't say it's not expensive. It's not that expensive, but it's reasonable, right? Okay. So once you see here, you can use this template. This is for quizzes, but there are also escape room down here, right? You can they call it breakout room, right? Or escape room. You can see here some escape room here. So you can just make use of this theme to suit you. In my case, normally I will start blank. I will use my own background or my own escape room concept. But you can try to take a look at this breakout room and use it in your classes. Okay, that's one idea lah. I will not go into step by step, by the way, because like I said, it will take a lot of time to really go through one by one. But something for you to explore. Okay, and even if you go to YouTube, if you type breakout room on Genially, there are quite a lot of tutorial. So I think the tutorial itself will guide you. For those who are interested to try escape room, or can consult Dr. Aisha because she has used it a few times, right? So you can try this one, escape room, or use Google Slide. Google Slide, just add your slide with a picture. You just have to find a room first, and then you put all the things up. You can imagine, right? You just find a room, just go to Google Images, find a room, whatever room you want to find, and then you just put in all this icon or all this material on it, and then link it to some quizzes or some tasks that you want them to do. Okay. The core element, right? These are some of the examples, but the core element basically goes back to these three things: game mechanics, game dynamics, game components. Normally, we focus on these two a lot: game components and game mechanics. What I'm trying to, if you notice, what I'm trying to sell you today is actually this one, the game dynamics. Because what I notice is we are using gamification or game-based learning in isolation, most of the time in isolation, and students don't see it as a beneficial kind of linkage from beginning until the end. They just see it as a one-off attempt, and then that's it, you know. So they will tell you 14 minggu mungkin 2 minggu je fun, 12 minggu lagi seperti biasa. I mean, like the normal thing that you do. But I'm not saying you have to be fun all the time. What I mean here is the experience has to be relevant. You can be alternate weeks. It can be maybe, you know, for that topic because it's more difficult. So you try to use this kind of approaches. Okay. So what I mean here is that this component, this is the typical component like leaderboard, points, quests. These are typical component. The specific instances or instanciation of the mechanics. All right. Then you have slightly bigger one we call chance, right? Challenge, competition, cooperation, win state, and feedback. I use a lot of chance actually. In my class, I use a lot of mystery box. That's why students have to come to class. Because if they don't come to class, even online classes, they would not know what happened because there's an element of, I play a lot with the element of unpredictability because they have to come, right? For the mystery box to, it's like they want to open up the mystery box that they get, you know, they don't know what's inside. If you follow how to put it, if you follow like MasterChef, for example, they also have mystery box kind of approach, right? Where the chef will not know what's inside that particular box. So when they open up, then they will see all the ingredients that they need to cook. This is the concept. Same thing lah. If you set that activity for that day and they don't know what they're gonna get, the mystery box challenge. So you just put it in the front of the classes. Different group will open up their boxes, or you know, you can use different type of you don't have to use box, you can use other things. Sometimes I use these plastic bags, right? Just put everything inside the plastic bag. I tie it up. Then different group will come and take it. When they open up, they will see, what am I going to do with this? You know, different things, because the different things will actually shape the thing that you're going to teach them, right? In my case, for example, I'm teaching programming languages, right? Oh, students hate programming languages, especially my classes, because they are all mostly from arts and they are not really into all these programming languages. You get some who are interested in programming languages, so they find programming languages is very hard. So what happened is normally I use objects to represent all these syntax or commands in programming languages. So different group will get different part of it. So but in the form of objects. What happened is because they have to collaborate. So this group will have to communicate with this group because they need to make sure that the coding will make sense and it will work. So what happened is towards the end, they have to key in the whole code and click run. If after they click run, that thing doesn't work, then something wrong. They have to go back to the team and make sure they rectify it. So this is chance, right? Then you have, of course, competition is the one that is quite common. Challenge, again, you can try. Challenge, cooperation is already there. But what is more important is this one up here. You need to have all this emotion, narrative, relationship, progression, and constraint to come up with all the things. Constraint means here is something that constraint here is not mean that the challenges like kekangan and that. Constraint here means what are you setting the limit? Because sometimes the constraints will shape the how to put it, the limit will shape the way they think, right? Just now I limit it to SDG, for example. That's a constraint that I set. So don't think beyond, just think within the SDG first. So that's the constraint that I set. Or I go for narrative. I love narrative, right? Really love narrative. So you try to figure out what the students will be interested and link it with the real world. And narrative doesn't have to be childish. That's another misconception. Just because I use Marvel theme doesn't mean my narrative has to be childish, like Iron Man and whatnot. You can relate it to a bigger kind of scope, like real world problems and all that. Of course, emotion, right? Emotion means what are you going to inject in your the way you play games. Are you going to inject some form of emotion or not? Again, by the way, this is not like everything you have to fulfill. But what I mean here is the dynamic up here is quite important. We tend to neglect the top one. We only focus a lot on the bottom two. Okay. So I'm going to do the play approach a bit, but I think we can take let me take 10 again. This is already 11, or take 5 because this part is still I think slightly towards the end. Do you want to take 10 now or later? Can take 10 first, I think, because it's already 11.
Here, Kee Man, how many more slides to go before
Not
the
much.
session?
Not much. There will be another. I think the last part is just tips, a quick one. But this one,
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
we take 10 first. 10 first.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kee Man. So I shall see you at 11:10. All right. I'll see you later. Thank you, Kee Man.
Yeah.
Hi, Kee Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just want to ask you regarding this gamification. When you blend this game into learning process, my personal concern is actually the evaluation part, the assessment part. Traditionally, we used to have these rubrics for each of the assessment to be documented. And I'm not sure how we can go about with this game. Like, how do you give an A minus, B plus in terms of the rubric itself? Yeah, completing the task, probably you want to give full marks, or how you deduct the marks from the game itself.
From if you're talking about if you see the way I structure it, right?
Yeah.
So let's say not everything is graded, by the way. Like in my courses, the graded part will be, let's say you can see here, team challenge 1, quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, quiz 4. I call it quiz at that time, right? So this is easily quantifiable, meaning to say whatever score they get from the quiz will be the score that they get, but it will be an average of the numbers lah. Meaning, let's say 7, there will be average of 7.
Yeah.
For project, like all this group project and all that, I have my own rubric. I can share your rubrics. Same thing. I still have my rubrics.
All right.
The rubrics is still given to the student, but then you can see here, like because they need to, in the case just now, they need to submit their report, so they still get the marks as usual.
All right.
For MQA documentation, like I said, they still have I still submit this, and how to put it, still document it lah, like this, the good one, the average one, and then the weaker one.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same
Do you encounter problems like most of them did very well, score very well in their quizzes or their test? How do you go about that? Like it is not a bell shape in terms of the assessment.
Oh,
Yeah, it's actually a bit,
you mean
yeah.
you mean
Negatively
for
skewed. Yes.
You mean for quizzes? So far, based on my experience so far, out of all the quizzes, it's not really skewed. It's quite balanced. It's quite normal, quite normally distributed for my case. Meaning to say, because I
Yes.
do it in my LMS for Moodle, we have this quiz tool, right? So once you finish, you still get the reporting. But
Mm.
there are, of course, some quizzes where I intentionally put it maybe slightly easier
Uh-huh.
because it's a foundation thing, like a easy fun just for them to get the mark. So that kind of cases, I would expect them to skew towards the good, the
The
better
good
marks
marks.
lah. It's
Okay.
okay after all, because for my case I average it, so I think the averaging will balance out the outliers lah, in a way, because
Mm.
if you only perform good in one, then of course that will be your final score. But in my case, it's they have to kind of go through a few quizzes. One reason why I did that is because to normalize like what you just said just now, so that it's not only one, how to put it, one kind of marks. So game, same thing like game as well. If you go back to the game concept, whatever score we get is not the final score yet, because we have to complete a few things in order to get our final score. If I can share with you how I did it, it's like this.
All right.
You can see some outliers. Sometimes this guy can get 10. You can see obviously this
Uh,
this challenge is easier, right? Because a
mm.
lot. So maybe those who perform well, they will get 9. But
Mm.
if I were to calculate all this part, right, you will see later on, if I change it to the table, it's quite normally distributed, right?
I see.
And there are certain quizzes like this one is just revision, right? And revision normally this is just bonus lah. This is challenge 7 for me is a bonus.
Uh,
So it's like just to help them to beef up the score, all right?
all
But
right.
but this is one way to buffer
Mm.
the biasness. Also, it also depends on the way you set all these quizzes now. Right?
Mm.
This is for quiz based. I think quiz based is easily quantifiable because you don't need to crack your head. Whatever they get from the quiz tool, then that's the score they get. But for the project kind of thing, or even for other gamification, you have to come up with your rubrics so that you're clear. This
Mm.
student, when they produce this kind of output or when they perform this kind of task, they would get
Mm.
this kind of marks. So I think rubric is still important when it comes to assessment for game-based learning. It's not just all fun lah. You need to figure out mechanism to capture all the marks as well, right?
Yeah, true, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
agree on
okay.
that.
Thank you, Kee Man. I think everyone is back. We shall now continue with the session part 3 of today's workshop.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
over to you, Kee Man.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. And I like the question because one way to solve that kind of mapping, you can always do a proper matrix between the task that you design with the marks lah, and then the kind of expected grading. Even though this course I said 100% attendance and all that, right, and students enjoy the class and everything, the
Mm.
final output, I mean, sorry, not the final output, the final outcome of my course is
Mm.
still normally distributed, surprisingly. So
Surprisingly,
majority still B plus, around B plus to B.
All
So
right.
only, I think this course has 17. I only get about, I think, seven students who get A. So it
Uh,
doesn't mean that just because you use GBL and
uh,
game, suddenly everyone's gonna score your course. Not really. It actually discriminate better in a way, because those who are probably more alert of the things that you are teaching, more aware of what you're trying to do, they would start to
mm,
score more. But another thing that I will share, which I will share in the later part of this part, is that
sure.
it's not just about game alone. There are other factors as well that will determine the student performance anyway, right? So
Yeah,
later on
sure.
I'll share. I'll
Yeah,
share on that.
also another question is, for those who didn't do well, what are the main reasons that who didn't do well? Is this
Yeah.
very consistent? They don't like game or what?
Not really. They love the game, and one thing I noticed, because for this course, I when I implemented it for 2 semesters, for this full one, the final exam is still there. And what I noticed is the final exam, the way it was pitched, maybe it's a bit too high. This is all based on my own reflection.
All right.
Because this course is not solely by me, because
Mm.
we have, there are some other lecturers as well for that, for when I try it out. So probably it's too difficult for them. But what I noticed is those who are scoring, I mean, but there's no failure in this course, of course, but a handful of C and all that. But when you ask them, it's not about the game. It's like they really are not interested in the course itself, like the whole, not the course, the program.
Mm-mm.
Linguistic students who do not want to be in linguistic, they kind of places. You know what I mean?
Their first
Meaning it's
choice.
not my course only lah. It's other
Mm.
courses. They are showing
Yeah, I
the same
understand that. We have those
behavior.
problems as well.
That kind of thing. So that kind of cases, I'm not really concerned, right? But the fact that I managed to increase those who are not so interested into, to passing the course, I think to me it's already quite an achievement lah, for a start, for using this kind of approach. But again, there's always this misconception that using game everyone will score, right? That kind of misconception.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Kee Man, the
yeah.
floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. So the play approach that I want to introduce today is just a quick one. I think you don't have to go deeper into all this stuff, but I just want to introduce you. One way to kind of think about what you can include in your design will be this thing called play approach, which we promote lah in our center. Our center is Gamification Center, but our commercial name is called Creative Culture, just to just to make it sound fancy, right? But if you go to our website creativeculture.my, you will see this thing being shared lah. So I would not go into detail, but basically it's quite easy. You have to decide the context and content first. What are you going to gamify? And then you have to pick a game idea. Usually we get it from inspiration. We get it from existing game just to start. Then you start to look for resources, material, ideas. This is where you can involve your students. Number 3 and number 4, and also change it to kind of like a prototype or design to execute. This is like implementation lah. I mean, not to say implement, design and development. This is the implementation part, the yield or evaluation part, where you get the feedback and the outcome from your learners. So the play approach is quite straightforward, but I will not really go deeper. This is just for your information on how to start off, the gamification process or the GBL process. And let me just go straight. Now, this is what I want to focus on actually for today. Remixing play, because I noticed whenever we talk about gamification and game-based learning, it's not so much about the tools. It's like let's say even if I introduce you to Genially and then I tell you Genially can do this, do that, right? If you don't have that idea on what to do, the Genially will just be another presentation tool, will just be another tool, right? Or Google Slide will just be another Google Slide tool to do presentation. But if you have the idea on how to change the way you plan your activities or the way you design your assessment even, then it makes it more interesting. So one way to get that kind of thinking going is what we call as a remixing play approach, or you can even call it remixing games, right? So in our team, this is our UK counterpart. I mean, it's like our sister partner for this whole thing. So you can see if you go to gamechangers.org, so this is another platform that you can go to. You can see Creative Culture is there, and this activity was done in Long Lamai, one of the remote area in Sarawak, where we also introduced gamification and all that to them. You can see some of the activities we have done. But the point is this part, resources. Game Changers and Creative Culture has this concept of open source, or we have Creative Commons kind of approach where we don't copyright our material just for the sake of copywriting. We make it available for free. So you can go here and download some of this material. But the one that I want you to go to and try is this one called Remixing Play. We also have Escape Room app, by the way. So under Escape Room app, there are some concept that we did for virtual escape room and and all this thing. But the thing that I want to introduce is this one, Remixing Play. You can use this in your own workshop or in your own activity with your students and all that, where it is helping you to plan like a game thinking kind of challenge, right? And this one, so yeah, there's a card that you can follow, but there's a virtual version, it's free one, digital deck, which I will want you to try now. We can spend like 10 minutes for this one. uh this is a virtual part. Let's say we want to get our thinking, start thinking. So you can sit with like 2 or 3 people, or even do it individually. So whenever a card like this is appearing, then you think of how health can be related to jumping rope. Now, this is quite relevant. So what kind of game can you devise, or what kind of gamified lesson that can you do, so that when they are doing this, or when they are playing jumping rope, for example, then they can also learn about health topics. So if you don't know about the game, you can just scan here and learn about the game. Now, if you click shuffle, of course, they will be randomized, and then a new set will appear, and you get to see how health can be and all that. But I have pre-select a few for you to try, because I want you to try and brainstorm this. Let's do this. Here, let me just copy this link. Let me just copy this link for you so that it's easier. Let's try this. See whether you can get your game thinking going. Because once you get this done, I mean, even when I started off to design game and all that, the challenge is always the idea. Because if you don't really play a lot of games, if you don't really have any idea of what else can be done, you tend to stop. You don't know what to generate. So what happened now? Let's get our thinking hat, put our thinking hat on, and then start to remake some games and see what can be done. So I have created this set. There are a few combination here. Remix 1, remix 2, remix 3, remix 4. You choose whichever you like. You can just start a new post down here, and then quickly, just a random idea or wild idea of what you can do with the game. For example, like this. First one, the topic is fake news, but you're going to use Scrabble, right? How are you going to use Scrabble to teach students about fake news, right? Some ideas. So you can just quickly type here, meaning to say you can change a bit of concept in Scrabble, right? And then but then apply it to fake news. Another one is science and Uno. How do you use Uno to teach about science? Any topic in science, right? Any topic in science. This one is Monopoly and Geography. I think this is quite easy because Monopoly itself is real estate. So you might want to, how do you relate to geography? Jenga and language, right? How do you generate ideas from here? And then last one, health and Batu Seremban. How do you Batu Seremban, right? How do you relate it to health? Okay, so can all of you go to the link given and quickly kind of like this is like wild idea kind of exercise. Just type in your idea, random one. I mean, not to say random. I mean, don't have to be too detailed, like how to play, how to just quickly say use Scrabble, change the tile of Scrabble to reflect or something like that, or the board change to something, and then divide into fake and fact, something like that. All right. So just quickly brainstorm and do not think too much. This process of remixing play means you try to generate as many ideas as possible without thinking too much first, because from here you get to train your brain to think, like your mindset, like okay, I have to figure out what are the game mechanics that I can use, right? So can you try this? I'm going to give you maybe, let's say not too long, maybe 5 minutes, right? By maybe 11:30 you can see some. So just try. All right, maybe we get a few and see. You can pick anyone you like. Yeah, I'm not gonna fix you. If you prefer to go for health, go ahead. If you prefer to go and just pick anyone you like, and you can either type by adding the plus sign here down every shelf, or you can just type in the comment section, depending on whichever you like. Okay, I have 5 here, so let's give you 5 minutes as well. Try it out.
Yeah, Kee Man,
Yeah.
I'm afraid I still don't get that actually, the idea of this
Which one?
remixing games actually.
The missing game means, let's say,
Yeah.
okay, let's say science and Uno.
Yep.
Remixing means,
Mm.
you know Uno, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, let's say Uno, normally we play with the color and the numbers and all that. How
Sure.
do you use Uno, the game mechanics, for example, or the same idea of Uno to teach something about a topic in a science, for example? So the science topic is up to you lah, whatever you want to teach. let's say you're teaching chemistry, right? And you want to teach them about maybe the periodic tables, and they had a hard time remembering the periodic tables.
Yes.
So the different colors, the periodic table has different colors as well. So the Uno color, let's say the different colors will represent different part of the periodic table, but instead of numbers, it would be maybe the chemical symbols. But how do you make it like a proper game? How do you play that? Based on the Uno concept, are they going to match the same color on the periodic table, or they're going to match which one is higher, which one is lower? You know what I mean? So remixing play means we don't create our own game from scratch. We make use of existing games, and then we try to mix it so that we can come up with our own version. You get what I mean? That's the idea of remixing. So right now, the more people contribute later on, you will see that some idea can be combined as well. So that's the beauty of remixing. You don't have to stuck to one idea. You get different idea.
Okay. Thank
Right.
you, Iman.
Okay. So try first.
Yeah, sure.
So far, only Uno and Batu Seremban is used. I'm not sure about this one. The beautiful weather is charming. I'm not sure what is what is related here. Okay, like Michelle already posted. Use Batu as a point for quiz. Yeah, can. That's a good one. But I'm going to leave it first. Then I will look through so that you are not disturbed. Yeah, this is approach that we normally use. Sometimes we got stuck. We don't know what to do with our topic. So instead of course, I'm going a bit extreme by giving you different topics, right? But if you want to practice this within your scope, then you can change this topic with the topic itself, within your course, like the units, for example. And then you mix it with different games, and then you get to see different you get different ideas, right? If you go to the website, I think there are more. You have health, you have resilience, you have geography, politics, and then it randomizes, it matches with different things. So you can say like mathematics match with this one. Gobak Sodor, I think this is an Indonesian game. And then Cluedo and all that. If you don't know the game, you can just scan the QR code, and then it will explain to you how to play the game. Like, how do you use this shuttlecock kicking with the mathematics, for example. So it forces you to think what else can be done. Okay. So I see some ideas flowing. The rest of you, each Uno card represents a drug. A group of 2-3 students would take 10 minutes to present a brief thing about the drug, the mechanics. I dah lupa. So nanti can. Okay. Alright, Dr. Aisha. So yeah, it could be. You don't have to mention the mechanics, of course. You just mention how you plan to use Uno. Okay. Each group to use the tile to make headline for fake news. Then they exchange the headline and turn it into real news. Yeah, that can be done. Maybe the headline could be because the tile could be too, because you might need a lot of tiles if you want to do headline, because the headline can be long, right? Maybe part of the headline, that typical clickbait kind of keyword, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, that's a nice idea. And then have each Jenga block written with a word. For each block that the student pick, they need to make a sentence. Yeah, okay. This is also quite popular, right? You can use the Jenga concept. Could use Batu Seremban to teach the burden of polypharmacy to pharmacy students, replacing the Batu. Okay. Quite nice. Help to also instill compassion when they are interacting with patient, because they can understand the patient feels burden better. Yeah, that's nice one. Can try this, but I don't know whether you can do this online. Because Batu Seremban is a bit more physical, right? And then use the Batu as pointers now. Any more coming in? Instead of arranging the alphabet to be a word, we can arrange the word to be mixed with other word. The word represent any terms of the topic. Each word chosen must be described. Yeah, that could be one. Okay. Any more? Any more? The rest start thinking. I can see some are still typing, but yeah. Try to generate your ideas, because the more you get yourself into this, the more ideas you have, and then you will notice that when you take a look at your courses, you get more ideas on how to gamify it. You can see why I don't want to kind of depend too much on tools. A lot of people will come and tell me, in fact, when I conduct workshop, they will say, ada tak one tool yang can help me gamify the thing immediately? I don't think so, right? I mean, even if it is, it still needs your time to think whether it's relevant or not. Most of the tool out there is also quite commercial, and you need to pay to use them, right? So and it may not fit your purpose. So I don't want you to kind of like invest too much on the tools. Focus more on the idea first and see what you can do. Insert the spaces on the board with places around the globe. Players need to just specify where is the place they landed, which isn't. If they cannot answer, go straight to jail. Yeah. That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I mean they're gonna learn geography. I'm not sure whether geography is taught in the in university like as a geography like normally it's part of certain courses, right? But it is a good start. You'll be surprised that some university students don't even know the continents, right? They don't even know how to differentiate the different continents. Okay, any more? Like now people know where Ukraine is. Yeah, I was telling my student, after Soviet Union collapsed, not many people actually know where Ukraine is, but now suddenly everyone know where Ukraine is. Uh, not not geography, but thinking form. Hell yeah, can. Molly could be a cool way to give me a pharma economy. Yeah, you can change it into all this, pharmacoeconomics kind of like change it to relate to your context. Can be done, right? Very interesting concept. Okay. Just post the general idea, by the way. Any more coming in? Ke malas nak fikir awal-awal ni. Okay. But anyhow, but this is a process that you can do with your colleagues or with your friends if you are running out of ideas. In our center as well, normally when we are thinking of things to gamify and all that, we will do this kind of approaches lah. Because we may not be able to play all the games, and we need people to explain to us the mechanics behind it, like how to play the game, and then we see, oh, okay, this one I can use it in my courses or for this unit of my course and all that. So if you would like to explore further on this one, you can go to the link I give you just now, game changes, or maybe I just give you the direct link, which is this one, remix play dot game change. It's called remix in a way because you remix it. Like if you are focusing on mathematics, then you don't change this one. You just change this. So how do you use Uno? I think Uno and mathematics is quite popular. You can actually use it a lot, and teaching how to add up or how to match the numbers, but it's too simplistic. Maybe not for a university level for that kind of approach. So you might want to change what else to be more relevant. And then like hide and seek, right? When I show hide and seek, a lot of students actually kept telling about the Squid Game, the Korean drama, and I was telling them, okay, in that case, if you got it wrong, I'm going to kill you, and then you get out of my class, for example. That kind of concept. But anyhow, hide and seek, you have Scrabble. What else? You have jigsaw puzzle. This is quite popular, but jigsaw puzzle you can actually do it more systematically at the upper level, like university level. Instead of the puzzle, it means jigsaw here means different group or different individual will have different part of that whole piece. Like I told you just now, the coding language, different group are actually getting certain part of the coding. So they need to check out each other and then ask each other for help so that they can form the full code of the programming languages that I'm teaching them. So same thing here. So if you're teaching them different parts of certain thing, so different group will get different thing, and then see how they combine. Or if you're talking about individual, they can also do like different individual have different part of certain component, and then you try to see how they work together to merge it, all right, to combine the puzzle together, to fix the puzzle together. So you have Mandarin Square, capturing. This is they have domino and all that. There are many games here lah, that you can look through. So if you do not know what the game is, right, you can actually scan the code and figure it out whether it's whether it can be applied in your context. Yeah, I saw the whole that do just yeah, jigsaw reading is one way. Jigsaw reading is another kind of like activity that normally is done in language classes. What I noticed is try not to make it too dry in a way, because it's supposed to be fun, right? So but then it really depends on the text as well, right? The kind of text that you choose for them to go and get their friends, try to match it, and whether they manage to complete the whole text and all that. Okay, and any more ideas, by the way? Let me see. So that, but then maybe it's too early for you to think, but you can see some more ideas here. The DNA sequence, yeah, can, but not many here. Semua ni mungkin too early to think, right? But this is one way to do it, right? One way to do it. All right. Thank you so much for those who have spent some time to participate in that quick activity. Another way is if you like to be more specific, right? You can also use this. It's also in the same website just now that I gave you. This is slightly more. Like a straightforward thing. It's still remixing. Where was it? Still remixing. If you notice here, we have psychology and monopoly, right? We have how to put it? Like you're gonna mix between these two, psychology and monopoly, and see how it works. Then of course this is just formality. What is the game description, time to play, target audience, number of players, learning outcome, rule of the play, and then instruction on how to play. So this is like quick mapping. Normally we do this for game design thinking workshop, 60-minute challenge. So each team will kind of formulate game, and the prototype can be done using different things. They can use Lego set or whatever set they have just to visualize. Because once you have this idea in general format like this, then you can fine tune it to suit your unit better, right? Rather than, it's always like gamification. Then you just think of the how to put it? You think of the quiz part, like everything seems to be quiz based, right? It's not so good as well. So I learned from my experience. Like I told you just now, if you notice, my previous one tend to have a lot of quizzes. What I noticed is it may not be an accurate measurement of the whole overall understanding, right? After all, quizzes is already very specific to that topic. But it's a good way to kind of give them some motivation so that they know that they get certain score as well. Okay. That's the thing. We have done this. So last part, this is just some useful to not much, not many things to share, but basically this part will cover some of essential thing that I learned from all this experience of gamification and GBL. First thing that is quite crucial that I noticed is GBL or gamification can't fix poor content. What I noticed, like I told you just now, we tend to wrap all these game mechanics around bad content. Meaning to say, you're not even clear on what you want to teach, or the content that you have prepared are not really well planned or well chosen to begin with. So just because you put it on the game format, like suddenly you present it in a more game-like kind of approach, it doesn't mean it will work, right? This is based on my own experience because I've tried different types. Like if you want to motivate students to read journal articles, for example, right? You pick one journal article that you identify online, and then you try to gamify it. For example, maybe you turn it into Jenga. So different tile will represent different part of the article, and then see whether they can identify, okay, this is method, this is abstract, and all that. Now, it can be done. It will only be fun if the choice of the articles that you have chosen actually help your learner to stay on task, right? If you pick something that the moment they read the first line, they already gave up, right, because of the difficulty, or maybe it's too fast, you should be doing, let's say, a gradual increment in terms of difficulty, and then you immediately give them something too difficult, then it will defeat the whole purpose of using GBL and gamification. In the end, they will still complain about the article. They will not remember anything about all the game that you have created and all that, for example. That will be one perspective. But if you like to try this out, you can always give something difficult, but then you test out different game approaches or game methods, right? And this is what I told you. You have to embrace game design thinking, meaning to say, in a game design thinking means you don't design to work immediately. It may work immediately, but if it's not, you don't have to give up. You don't have to feel sad, or you don't have to feel like you're doing something wrong, right? So just try it out. If it didn't work, like what in my case, if it didn't work, and then I'll change it next semester, or I'll the next task I will try to fine tune it. Maybe I don't want to use this one. I use a different mechanism or different mechanics. Okay. And let's not get too carried away or too excited. Like I said just now, this is also based on my own documentation, and also whatever we have researched so far. The first one, I think the advantages are quite, I would say pro and con. Even if you do a review, if you really do a meta-analysis of all these studies on gamification GBL, many people do not really tell you so much about these advantages. They will be selling you on the advantages, because the disadvantages tend to occur over time, right? Not during the experiment, which is very short term. But like for example, known to trigger extrinsic. This is very popular. If you have no rewards, your GBL, your gamification normally would not really work well, right? And like I said here, intrinsic motivation is not easily triggered because you need to make sure it's relevant, and some games can be perceived as lame, like I told you just now lah. You put your effort to do it, but then in your student mind, it's still very lame. Nothing really, nothing really beneficial to them. And the good student normally will try to go against the idea of using certain games. So you might want to think well. But for a start, it's always good to depend on this first for a start. So this is where I told you your gamification activity or your GBL activity can be attached to assessment. Give them some marks and reward. To me, the reward is not just about giving them marks or assess them. It's also like a motivation for them to know that they are doing okay in the course, or they're keeping track of the necessary, right? Most research has shown gamification is able to promote greater student engagement and increase positive behavior. Most, right? But then it normally leads to distraction or problem with attention span, right? And this one, students begin to expect more fun, and if they don't find it, it leads to frustration. It's like a double-edged sword, meaning to say, if you do too much as well, they tend to increase the expectation, and if you don't deliver it well, it will also leads to frustration, meaning the engagement will also drop, right? Let's say this week you do gamification, next week you don't do it, and then after a while then you do it again. The momentum is not there, so it will not really work well. And advantages, another advantage would be, can be embedded with inquiry-based learning and approaches, or any other approaches. Actually, problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning cover problem-based learning, project-based learning, and all these things. But then there is a lack of focus on the learning outcome, because it tends to focus too much on the entertainment part. You will see, like, even if you do GBL, it becomes very fun during the process, but then the learning will not be that impactful. But again, these are all quite contextual based, meaning to say it may work in your context, it may not work in a different context. So you need to try your best to document all this monitoring and do some progress checking on whether it works in your case. Also, I think we also have to be more careful in a way, when just because we implement game-based learning or gamification in our teaching and learning, we shouldn't be trying to justify it to be an effective tool. Just because, like just now, just because I show you I do all this fun stuff, I don't try to like make sure, oh, I'm going to give my student all the marks, leniently, or try to make sure they all pass with A and all that. You get what I mean? You still do the necessary accountable kind of measures to make sure that they are assessed accordingly. So if you don't achieve it, then they don't achieve it, right? You don't have to force yourself just because you use GBL, oh, everyone has to pass or everyone has to get good grades and all that. Like I told you just now, even my courses, not everyone got A, but the comment that I get, the evaluation is so really, more meaningful. Meaning even those who get lower grade, like those who are not getting A or A minus and all that, they still give good comments, meaning they enjoy the whole experience, right? But like I said, there are other factors as well. They may not be interested with the topic from the beginning. So no matter how hard you try to use game, sometimes they don't get it. But they do participate in a way, because it makes it slightly easier to follow than the typical approach of reading slides or that kind of thing. Okay. So the problem with extrinsic reward, like point and prizes, like I'm quoting the King here, is that they devalue the content and actual learning objective. The content ends up being the means to get those rewards. This is something that I try so hard to overcome as well, which I'm still trying, because if you try to gamify content and activities or not, it becomes just a mean for them to get the rewards. In the student's context, it would be the A, or the the points or the value that you want them, that they want. So if you can change that kind of concept and the student go through the process, then they would enjoy the whole experience. And of course, sometimes not getting an A doesn't mean you are not learning, right? So that kind of conception. Okay, last slide. Something for you to consider. This 4 C's that I keep on repeating as well, but something for you to consider. Not saying that you have to consider everything, but something when you're designing GBL or when you're doing gamification, these are something that you have to think about. First one, creativity in terms of teacher persona. Remember what I said about model protagonist by John Dewey, by Parrish, quoting John Dewey, principle number, I think the last principle, 5 or 6 just now. You need to have your persona ready in a way probably slightly different from the usual you, right? You have to be more open, be more flexible, and expect different outcome from your learners, because like games, you know what happened in games is like people get hooked into game because you get to try over and over again. It's very behaviorist actually, in a way, because once you fail to cross the level, you will keep on trying and trying and trying. And the beauty about gaming is it allows this, right? You game over, you play again, you game over, you play again. But in real life or in learning, we tend to, if you fail, then fail, right? Or if you manage to get a bad score for this assignment, that's it, right? So probably that's something that we need to consider as well. What else can be done to, so that those weaker one, we can try to help. They may not score really high, but at least they are putting effort to gain the necessary elements or the component of your course. The content as well, you have to be slightly more creative, not just the typical structuring, following textbook kind of thing. Curiosity, try to inject a bit of curiosity, like all this inquiry-based pedagogy. You can always embed GBL with PBL and all that just now I mentioned. Risk-free experimentation, right? When they are attempting the group work, like in my case project, they are allowed to resubmit twice, right? But they have to think when they have to resubmit and all that. They have to plan nicely. So there's an element of curiosity because they get to experiment, okay? Connection, try to relate to real world. Make sure it's relevant to the real world context, not game just for the sake of game. After they play it, they know they're going to link it with the real world context, right? And then encourage social interaction among the group members, okay? Lastly, consistency. I think this is also key, right? In terms of consistency, in terms of learning experience and also learner autonomy. You have to be consistent in terms of what you expect them to do in your course, or what you expect them to experience in your course. If you keep on changing your goalposts, right? Like game, if you play a game and then the game suddenly keep on changing the mechanics, suddenly this is it will create confusion and also demotivate the players, right? And same thing in learning. If you keep changing the goalposts, you are not consistent, or you are not really, hold on to the, the same kind of expectation, then it will be very hard, right? In terms of expectation, especially, right? When you started off, you have that kind of expectation, and then suddenly you change your expectation to maybe slightly higher or lower and all that. It's very hard to make sure that your learners stay on track, because you keep on changing your expectation, and even your, what do you want them to be flexible in, whether are you going to allow them to do this, or are you going to allow them to do that and all that. So you have to fix this quite early and be consistent throughout. Okay, and that's it. That's from me, right? Any question, just in case?
Yeah, thank you, Kee Man. So I would like to open the floor for Q&A now. Okay, Associate Professor Dr. Aisha, please.
I have 2 questions, Kee Man.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay, talking about consistency
Yeah.
in terms of the learning experience for students, I just want to know, for the one that you shared just now, your course, you have I think 7 or 8 quizzes, something like that.
Yeah.
Do you use the same platform, or you use the same platform?
Same platform.
What?
Quizzes,
Okay.
I use that one.
Quizzes.
That one I use quizzes, but for the individual one, I use the LMS one, because for the individual one, I need the name, right? So it's easier to use the LMS platform because the name is already there. Like quizzes,
Okay.
Quizzes is for the team challenge, so they know, like, basically whenever I say okay, team challenge quiz, so they will sit together and they would attempt the quiz together. So only one terminal, because the team challenge is done in the class. So I use the quizzes tool, as you can see here just now. Let me see, was there a picture on that? Let me quickly go there. Yeah, this is you see, this is team challenge. You can see the quizzes on my screen. So that whenever
Okay.
it's team challenge, then they will sit together. Only one terminal, only one person is punching the answer. But they have to discuss. You can see them discussing, and then one person punch. And I allow them to refer to resources if they want to lah. But team challenge quizzes are normally just to test the foundation before they kickstart the activity of the day. Like this one is the activity of the day. So they do it first. So I standardize the platform. So they are clear actually. So when you if you want to give my case, because I gamify the whole semester, what I did was I have a starter kit. I call it a starter kit. So in the kit, I will tell them, okay, these are the things that you need to be familiar with, and also the like a glossary of things that I will be using and all that, so that they are clear of my expectation. Of course, I do brief them as well in the first lesson, so they know when I say this, because I have like a term for everything, so they know what to do. Like when I say team challenge one, team challenge time, then they will know, right? Blah blah blah, that kind of thing lah. So you have your own catchphrase for different tasks. So
Are you going to commercialize your starter kit?
maybe maybe.
Okay. My second question is about you have a lot of experience in running workshops for educators, for lecturers, yeah?
Yeah.
In your experience, how long do you see? Because that's not. I think one of the critical thing you mentioned was that the time, don't get disheartened if
Yeah.
it doesn't go the first round. So
Yeah.
usually, in
Yeah.
your experience, how long would a lecturer would see results? Would see, like, they can see that students are actually engaged
Kind of lose with that, but yeah.
with the game in front of them. Can you hear me? No.
Yeah. Your voice is breaking on, but I think I get what you're
Okay.
trying to ask.
I'm gonna.
Uh,
Okay. Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Just
Okay.
repeating.
Yeah.
In you're very experienced in running, conducting the game-based learning or gamifying the learning workshops. So I
Yeah.
wonder, in your experience, you have seen lecturers,
Mm.
you coming to your workshop, and how long or how many times, how long would they normally take to see the
The result.
positive effects, the results in the students usually when
If
they apply those things?
if you're talking about those who try it out like one off for certain topics and all that, normally, by if you're talking about semester, then it will be about 2-3 weeks kind of thing, if it's one off kind of activities lah. Because I get a lot of lectures coming to me saying that when they try this, suddenly students are more engaged, or the attendance increases, especially for online classes that happened for the past 2 years. Some lecturers have problem getting students to come to class because uh, the issue is always they don't see the relevance of attending classes when they get to read your slides on
Yes.
for that. So but when you do this kind of activity online, and I mean with the students, because this can be done in breakout rooms and whatnot, right? Student tend to show positive sign within 2-3 weeks if it's one off, right? One off kind of trial. But if you're talking about what I'm trying to do here, like a whole semester thingy, usually it will take one cycle lah, one whole cycle. And but the average, I think, will be, let's say to be safe, I would say half a semester. Then only you will see it. Whether, but normally within 2-3, if you do it consistently for 2-3 weeks, you will see the feedback, and you'll be surprised that some students will actually go the extra mile and come to you and tell you what they think about your class. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
This is based on what I get lah, the feedback. But I personally think, if it's one-off kind of activity and all that, and let's say if you're doing the usual thing, for example, Kahoot, for example, it's nothing new to them, to be honest, because
Exactly.
every courses is using Kahoot, and so you don't see the impact. That's what I meant by don't get disheartened when this thing happen. Then you know that, like my case, when I ask the class, do you want to use Kahoot? They say no. So then
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like you get excited to use it in the first class, which I did actually. In fact, then the next class I change. I use quizzes and then tell them, some courses are using quizzes, but I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use it individually. I'm going to use it as a group. So I devise it like a group base. So they be a bit excited because for the first time they answer the quizzes as a group rather than individually, right? in that kind of case. And I allow different mechanics, like they get to have a quick brainstorming before they answer each question and all that lah, something like that. So this is something like I said, you really have to try it out, then only you know whether it works or not, and then you try it again.
But don't try all at once, perhaps just a few. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Like escape room as well, you can try it out, and then you can try whether how to put it, the whether student can get the point of escape room, because some student will struggle. They may not understand the mechanics of escape room, so it will take a while. If majority cannot do it, then you might want to demonstrate it and do it again, right? Okay. Any other question?
Thank you, Dr. Isha. Thank you, Kee Man. Yeah, Kee Man, I have another question.
Sure.
Do you have other questions in the chat room? There is none. Yeah, I have another question regarding the gamification or gamified lecture. So do they have problems with the terminology on this game? Terminology or a new vocabulary when we use special terms for our game for specific mission. What's your thought on this?
This is where I told you just now, the starter kit or the onboarding is important. So if you're trying something which is different, like what my case, in changing assignment to mission and all that, you have to be clear lah. So in my starter kit itself, there's a list of glossary that I'll be using. So I give it to them, and in my first session with them, I will tell them, okay, in this course we're going to go for mission and this one, and they see it. In fact, sometimes all this minor stuff like mission objective, you don't really have to explicitly explain. They know it, right? Just that what they need to know is actually whether like this one, Lancome 3.1, is it an assignment, right? Or is it an assessment? Sorry, is it an assessment? So giving them a list of like okay, this is a project and this is an assess project, so they will know that there will be marks attached to it, something like that. But you don't have to go specific, like telling them, okay, mission in my course is like this, no, in detail kind of definition. But as long as they know what you're trying to do, like I told you just now, I have a certain catchphrase, like when I say it, the student will know what to do, kind of thing. So quite important to do the onboarding session, just like any game. When you want to play it, right, the game will start to introduce you, okay, this is where you
like a trailer kind of thing. I'm not sure if you also provide trailer kind of video, the introductory video. That would be fun,
yeah.
So give some preview of the story.
I actually have that. In my my pre-class, because I use Flip as well, right? Pre-class activities. So my pre-class activities usually have full of videos my video. So some videos I purposely put it with the like a really like a animated version lah. Sometimes I superimpose me with the Iron Man punya suit lah, macam-macam, just to lure them. But then that is just extra to me. It's just something that you can try, but it's not really compulsory. But you can make use of the mechanics that whatever that you're comfortable in, and then try to inject that kind of fun into your teaching and learning process lah. But if you're not really comfortable doing everything, then just try one or two first. Just to start, just to see the feedback.
Okay, thank you, Kee Man. Any more questions from the audience or participants before we take a group photo? I think if there is no other questions, then probably for audience, if you are convenient, please turn on your camera. We shall have a group photo session. All right.
Oh.
So
there's even somebody in the car. Who's that in the car? Joining from
Hi.
Me. I'm
Miss Azwa, please.
son from school.
All right, Miss Azwa, please. Boleh tolong organize ambil group photo, please.
Okay. Okay, ready?
Okay, baik. Kejap.
Okay. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, last one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, masih Cik Azwa. So let me see what else we have. So Kiman, any final message or take-home message for our audience before we end the session?
Just start. Meaning, if you have not tried gamification and game-based learning, you might want to start and see whether it works.
Stop it.
And another thing would be the one that I told you just now, Flip.
People
Let student also be part of the process so that they also design games and activities for your topics or for your unit. I think that would be useful. Sometimes if we depend on ourselves, we lack of ideas. Student may have more interesting ideas.
The step number 5 then continue with step number 6.
Yep.
Co-design and student will come up with their own product.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Kiman. Well, ladies and gentlemen, so it has come to an end of our workshop. It is hoped that this 3-hour workshop would help spur innovative efforts in teaching and learning, as well as enhances students' learning experiences, particularly for digital native students. So once again, a big thank you to Kiman. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank our IT team, Miss Azwa and team, and our audience who stays with us till the very end of this program. So we shall see you in our next workshop somewhere around 17th of May 2022, entitled Scholarly Teaching from Classroom to Teaching Innovations and Publication by Associate Professor Dr. Azidah Abu Ziden from University Science Malaysia. Any words from you, Associate Professor Dr. Aisha?
I think it's a very illuminating sharing session workshop from Kiman. I learned a lot from you. Also, you can see I make notes as well. There's a lot of things here. I don't know whether you can see that I've learned. So thank you very much, Kiman, for actually coming and share your experiences, your thoughts, with all of us here. And to the e-learning committee, Dr. John, thank you very much. And the committee members, thank you very much for making this work. And hopefully we'll be again meet next time, next round. And Azwa, thank you very much. Orang belakang screen. Thank you. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. So till then, goodbye and take care.
Dear Dr.
Thank you,
John.
Kiman. Thank you, Dr. John.
Thank you, everyone.
Dr. Lim, Stephen Lim.
Dear Dr. John, I think quite a number of us can't get to submit the attendance.
Send the link because we were so engrossed.
Betul.
Guys, we didn't read it.
Our apology.
Azwa, tolong buka balik boleh? Lagi 10 minit kah boleh?
5 minutes saja. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes only. I'll close at 12:10. Sorry
12.
because dah beritahu, dah maklumkan earlier. So it's open now. I will close at 12:10.
Okay.
Thank you. But Kiman, I think good turnout lah. This time, about 90 plus over participants. So good turnout lah, I think.
Hopefully it's useful.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is really helpful, and I still remember when the first time when I participated in this gamified quizzes or lecture. The challenge is, as a student, many years ago, like 20 years ago, I found difficulty in those vocabulary, the terms. Yeah, because I didn't really play games those days. Yeah, so those terms looks quite new to me. And then mission, probably those who used to play game, they are used to mission. What to do actually, that is the objective. But for the minority kan, you mentioned just now, probably it took us some time to get used to the storyline.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. And then, because we are from the traditional education, it's
Yeah.
not the kind of education. We focus more on the assessment,
Yes.
the
Yes. Yes.
grades, the games. I think to understand the game itself, it takes time. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. True. That's why the onboarding, the starter part, you need to really make sure everyone on the same page. They know what you're talking about, and then everyone also are able to communicate with each other using the same terms and same concept lah.
Yeah,
I do the onboarding and all that quite often in the beginning of the courses. Yeah.
true. Unless we make it a culture, like
Everyone knows it. Yeah, then
we
okay.
make it compulsory, like 20% of all the courses must blend this into the syllabus.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it is just one or two subjects or courses with this gamification, probably some of the student will like, but most of the student probably to understand the game itself, mechanics
Yep.
itself,
Yep.
they'll get
Take
very
time. True. Agree.
yeah. The workshop has ended because we are now opening the link for the participants
Attendance.
to sign in their attendance.
Sure. Kiman, again, thank you very much. I mean, I really appreciate
No problem. Glad to be
you sharing.
here. Okay. Thank you,
All right.
everyone. Take care, please.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care, everyone.